Hey, it's Conrad, the mortgage guy, and you're listening to 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff. Eric, what's going on, man? How are you?
I am outstanding. I'm here in Clearwater, Florida. Mrs. B and I we're watching our grandson this weekend while Garrett and MJ are off having a romantic weekend on a beach somewhere. So we're having a blast.
Well, that's awesome, man. I'm glad you got to get down there. It feels like you've been a world traveler. Can you just take us through your travel schedule for like the last 10 days or 2 weeks or so? Because it feels like it's like nitro days for you right now.
It's actually more intense, believe it or not. Now, some of it is, by choice. Like I'm down here in Florida by choice. But I can't even tell you where I've been for the last 10 days. I think I started sometime in Wyoming, and there was a New York trip in there. There was a trip to North Carolina in there. There was obviously the Atlanta weekend with all of you. And I'll be here until Tuesday, and then I'm heading home. So it will be a 2-week stretch by the time I get home.
Who's having more separation anxiety right now, you or your dog, Nikki?
I got an issue with Nikki. Now, unfortunately, Nikki was diagnosed with Cushing's disease. So she's struggling a little bit, and I guarantee. Now, I just talked to the vet this morning, or the people that I board her with, and of course, she's happy, and they're sending me pictures and all that kind of stuff. But she does get a little anxiety, separation anxiety. I, on the other hand, get a lot. It's really hard for me to be away from my dog.
Well, I'm glad you get to be reunited, and I know it'll feel so good here in just a couple of days. We're going to be talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly of professional wrestling the last week. There's been so much change that's happened and major news, and people are curious about what's next. We're going to be talking about all of that, and we are live on a lot of different platforms this morning. I should apologize. Normally, Eric and I record on Thursday, and the show populates on Friday morning everywhere you enjoy podcasts, but I had something on my end of the world that happened that allowed me to, or forced me to not be able to record on Thursday night. So we're coming to you on a Saturday morning, but I don't know, man. To me, Saturday morning and wrestling just kind of go hand in hand. It was a big part of my fandom to watch Superstars or Power Hour, or the syndicated shows from WCW. I always wound up watching them on a Saturday morning. So the idea that we're accidentally live on a Saturday morning kind of feels good to me, Eric. What do you think?
It absolutely feels right. And Saturdays are, it's the weekend. We're all looking forward to having some fun. And what better way to have some fun than to kick it off talking about wrestling on a Saturday morning? You're right, man. When I was a little kid growing up in Detroit, my mom would take my dad to work on Saturday mornings. So she had the car, because we only had one car. So she would drop my dad off at work on Saturday mornings, and then she would take the car to go grocery shopping, which means that my little brother and I, he's 4 years younger than I, had the house to ourselves, which was like amazing. And we would start out by watching cartoons. And once we got through our cartoons, I think Roadrunner was like the last cartoon we'd watch, and then professional wrestling would come on. Big time wrestling from CKLW in Windsor, Ontario, Canada. It's where I cut my teeth on pro wrestling, but it was always on Saturday mornings. So there's something just, I don't know, right about it.
Speaking of Canadian wrestling, I got to catch up over the weekend with Scott D'Amore. He actually joined us and QT Marshall for the 1FW taping there in McDonough, Georgia on Sunday. And he's got some big things planned for Maple Leaf Pro. And I guess he's taking over the old Jack Tunney territory. You can catch the D'Amore Drop on Yahoo every week. And he actually talked a lot about spending the weekend with Eric Bischoff at his power plant weekend. We'll talk about that a little later. Before we do, though, I kind of wanted to talk about what you just did. I guess it was Thursday afternoon. You spent the afternoon at High Spots, and I want to encourage everybody, if you're an Eric Bischoff fan, go check out highspots.com, or, of course, highspotsauctions.com. But we may even have a video of something that I've never seen before, and I thought, hey, this is kind of cool. Let's take a look. Spray painting action figures with the NWO. I don't know why, but it's still cool all these years later. Is that the first time you've spray painted stuff in a long time?
Yeah, and I had to practice like on a piece of just regular cardboard to make sure that I had my technique down, right? Because I'm not used to tagging stuff, but I got it down and had a blast. And yeah, we sold a ton of those things. It was kind of fun.
They do such a great job. If you're not familiar, High Spots are the same folks who bring you WrestleCon. Michael Bakikio and crew are one of the gold standards in pro wrestling. You know, a lot of people sort of come and go in the pro wrestling space. They've been around for, nearly 30 years. I mean, I remember in high school, High Spots was a thing. And I just have such admiration for the business that Bakikio has built, not only with High Spots, but his auctions and gimmick tables and WrestleCon. It's a fun business, is it not, Eric? You got to see it up close.
I was actually really impressed because it's an operating business. It's not just a hobby on the weekends, which is the impression, you get sometimes is that people are just doing this as a side hustle. This is a legit business. They've got a manufacturing facility where they make ring mats and gear, pads. So they've got, the business to business side of their business model. And then they've got the consumer side, which is, the collectible stuff and the things that we were doing the other night. So Michael and his team, he's got a great team of people, by the way, and that's usually the case. It's very rarely one individual. It's more than likely, if you have a successful business, one individual that's surrounded by a lot of very talented people and committed people. And that's what Michael's got over at High Spots. Very, very impressed. Classy group, very efficient. Everything went as planned. So it was a lot of fun. I mean, it was a great Thursday night, to be honest with you.
Yeah, if you've ever found yourself at an independent wrestling event and thought, man, that's a pretty good looking ring, or hey, look how professional those turnbuckles look, or man, that canvas looks nice, or hey, where'd they get those skirts? There's a good chance that it's from High Spots, and I don't know, maybe one of the best kept secrets amongst the hardcore fans. So want to give them some love and want to encourage you, if you're looking for some really cool and rare autographed Eric Bischoff collectibles, highspotsauctions.com and highspots.com can probably hook you up. We think they do a great job, and we know you'll be happy with what you see. Real quick, I also want to plug right at the top of the show. I don't know that you had a chance to see this yet, Eric, but JBL and I have started a brand new podcast. It's called Have More Money Now. And you might be thinking to yourself, wasn't that the name of JBL's book back in the day? It sure was. And now we're answering all of your financial questions, and we're talking about credit on my side of the street, and how to improve your credit score, and how to buy a house, and how to best manage credit card debt and get out of debt. But once you've actually cleared the debt, now it's time to start saving and investing. And a lot of people don't really know where to start. So JBL is going to help guide the way, and we may actually have a clip. Let's take a look.
I played a little pro football, and when I got done, I just didn't make any money. So when I got done, I didn't have any money, and I thought, I wasted a couple years of making money, and I thought if I ever have money again, I'm going to figure out how to invest it. Peter Lynch, a great investor, always said, know what you own. You can't explain what you own in a couple sentences. You should own it. You don't buy things just because they think they're going to go up. You buy things because you know it's a good company. You need to be able to understand the company, but also have the time frame that you know will be 10 to 15 years. And if you have that, pretty much for sure you're going to get in the company and you're going to make money. Best advice I ever got was from the legendary wrestler Stan Hansen, was don't buy a boat. What he was saying was, don't buy something you don't need. He's not saying don't buy a boat. If you want a boat and you got the money to buy your damn boat. Your life's about enjoying things. But what he's saying is don't buy things you don't need.
Check it out. If you're tired of living paycheck to paycheck, if you're tired of guessing with your money and you're ready to start winning instead of just hoping, you got to check out the brand new podcast from John Layfield. Have More Money Now. It's not fluff. It's not theory. He's breaking down his actual portfolio. We actually run through the stocks that he's invested in, what's worked better than others, why he picked them. You're going to learn what an ETF is and a whole lot more. And we're actually giving away a copy of his book right now. So if you'll go hit the subscribe button at havemoremoneynow.com, that's just going to take you right to our YouTube channel. It's totally free. Hit the subscribe button, turn on the notifications bell. But if you'll actually post a screenshot and tag at Have More Show, we're going to pick one lucky winner and send you an autographed copy of JBL's book. Eric, you've known John for a long time. That fella knows a thing or two about investing, does he not?
Yeah, it's funny when people, in the wrestling community, when you talk about JBL, the first thing that comes to mind is his clothesline. right? And some of the great matches he had in WWE. But John is a very, very smart man, and he's incredibly savvy and successful when it comes to the world of finance. So I think between you, Conrad, and your knowledge of the mortgage industry and credit and how to best manage both, combined with John's insight into investing, that's going to be a powerful show that I for one, will definitely be not only listening to, but taking notes on.
And let me just say, too, if you're listening and you're thinking, I don't have any money to invest, well, here's how you get the money. You clear your debt first. And one of the first things we talked about on episode 1 was, hey, how do I best get rid of my credit card debt? How do I best boost my credit score? I actually gave a tip and trick in there that I've shown people who have applied for mortgages for the last 24 years I've been in that industry, how to get an extra 100 points added to your credit score in like 30 days. Go check it out. HaveMoreMoneyNow.com. We are live, and we've got a lot of great questions here. We do have a show format. We'll get to it, but I wanted to make sure that we acknowledge some of these great questions that we've got coming in. Alan Martin is with us here live, and he says, Eric, I saw you in an episode of the Jeff Foxworthy show. What was that experience like?
It was a blast. It was such a great crew. I mean, we did the show. I did it with Randy Savage. And we did the show and hung out with the cast afterwards. We all went out to dinner, and as well as a producer and a director. I've never felt so welcome by a large group of people who I'd never met before as we did. It was really, really fun. Obviously, taping the show was fun because it's different than what we normally did at the time. But it was nothing but a positive experience. Jeff is a fantastic person. He's just such a genuine, down to earth. If you didn't know better, you would just, think he's a guy that works at a warehouse somewhere and is fun to hang around with. He's really a talented and genuinely nice guy.
KS Dixon 86 is with us here live, and he's got an interesting question. Hey, Eric, clear up some confusion. How involved were you with Matt Ratz? Conventional Fantasy Booking says you would have graduated Matt Ratz, from whom left at age 21, into Fusion's cruiserweight division. Would that have been a possibility? Maybe you take some talent from Matt Ratz and bring them into a larger operation, or what was your experience with Matt Ratz? So I guess maybe we should also explain to people who don't know what we're talking about, what the heck was Matt Ratz, Eric?
Yeah, Matt Ratz was an idea that came with the person that reached out to me. His name was Graham, and I can't remember his last name. Graham reached out to me and said, hey, we've got this thing we're doing up here in, I can't remember what part of Canada it was in. Doesn't really matter. It might have been Edmonton. But he said, we'd like to fly you up and bring you in and just have you see what we're doing and give us your thoughts. So it was a very informal opportunity. I went up there with Jason Hervey, and we sat in. We got a look at what they were doing. I think they were producing this show with the idea in mind that it would air somewhere like on MTV, or if there's a Canadian equivalent of MTV. So it was definitely a show that was targeted for a much, much younger audience. It was faster paced. A lot of high flying, which you would consider to be kind of cruiserweight action, because most of the talent they had, I don't think I saw anybody there that weighed more than 180 pounds. So they were smaller, lighter, much younger guys. We're talking about teens, mid-teens, late teens, primarily, couple guys in their 20s. But it was really, the idea was a good idea. There was just nothing for me to really contribute. I wasn't interested in trying to sell their show for them, which is what I think they were really hoping for, is to have me jump on board and kind of represent their product and help them get it on television. But I had so much going on at the time, and I really wasn't interested in getting involved with wrestling on any kind of a full-time or major scale. So I thanked them for the opportunity, had a blast while I was up there. Met a couple guys that I ended up spending some time in the business. Teddy Hart was there at the time. He was really young before he turned into a train wreck. So yeah, met a lot of interesting talent, but there was no formal plan, strategy, or anything like that. It was really social more than anything.
We've never talked about this. What was your experience like with Teddy Hart? I'll admit I was a fan watching from afar of what I thought was possible with Teddy Hart. And I thought, hey, this is going to be one of the can't miss stars of the future. I only met Teddy once. And it was briefly. He showed up randomly, believe it or not, backstage at StarCast in Las Vegas. And I wasn't sure that was him, but with the shiny suit and the crazy hair and the cat and toe, I thought this is unmistakably Teddy Hart. What was your experience like with Teddy?
Very limited. I met Teddy for the first time at Matt Rat's. I think I may have crossed paths with him once or twice subsequent to that, where I kind of, I don't want to say washed my hands, where I lost interest in getting to know Teddy any better. I'll never forget, I was on my way to WWE for something. It might have been a Monday Night Raw or whatever, but I was in an airport and Teddy happened to be in the same airport, probably going the same place I was. He came in on a different flight than I did, but we both ended up at the bar at the airport. And Teddy didn't know I was sitting there, right? I'm just sitting there minding my own business, having a hamburger or whatever I was doing. And I could hear Teddy talking on the phone. He was a couple chairs down from me, I think, or right behind me. I couldn't help but overhear him. He was very loud. And I was listening to him talking about how he is going to approach WWE. It's almost like how he was going to negotiate his appearance fee there. And I was just listening to him and I thought, this cat has no clue. He is absolutely clueless, has way too high of an opinion of himself, which is not unusual. But yeah, I just knew right then that he was probably not going to be long for the business just because of his attitude. I kept my distance from him from that point forward. I had no interest in getting to know him any better or doing anything with him.
Well, what could have been? I think he's got to be one of the. He's on my list of, hey, this guy, his career should have worked out differently. Not in the same vein as like a Monty Brown or a Low Key, but I think Teddy Hart is somewhere on that list. Do you think that his lack of success or I don't know, durability in the business maybe is the right word? Do you think that's all just, can we chalk it up to self-sabotage, Eric?
Oh, it's 100% self-sabotage. His attitude, again, going back to that, I listened to him, his idea of how to conduct business. I could hear his conversation and I knew right then, he's 22 years old at the time or whatever he was, 23, 24, had absolutely zero real experience in the business, but the way he was approaching, at least on the conversation that I could hear, it's like he'd been around, like he thought he was Bret Hart, and I think that's part of the problem. He used that Hart name and that Hart influence to the point where it's all that he had. And he thought he was a lot smarter than he was. And yeah, self-sabotage is absolutely the best way to frame it.
Well, we're going to have some fun answering some more questions here. I want to do one more, and then we're going to talk about some wrestling. I guess first we probably need to service some sponsors. But we have kind of a silly question from Awesome Sauce that I think you may have fun with. Now, you're going to have to put your silly hat on for this one, Eric, and I know that's a challenge at times, but here it comes. Who of these people would you have join the NWO at its peak? George the Animal Steel, Kamala, Vern Gagne, or your favorite, the AWA legend, Jake the Milkman Millman? I think he probably did the last name wrong, but you get the idea. If you had one of those cats to join probably the black and white version after there was a split, if I had to guess, George the Animal Steel, Kamala, Vern Gagne, or the Milkman, I could see Vern Gagne in the NWO, as crazy as that is.
No, man, I would have gone with Jake. Jake, the Milkman Milliman, he was like the jobber of all jobbers in the AWA. Him and George Scrap Iron Gadaski were the two guys in the AWA that would never win a match until the day Jake, the Milkman Milliman, won a match. And if you've never seen a local crowd, because everybody loved Jake. He'd been a jobber in AWA for years. He was there before I started watching it. And when Jake won his first television match, you thought that he won the World Heavyweight Championship. The crowd went crazy. Jake the Milkman Millman was a fun, comedic type of character that I think we would have had a lot of fun with in the NWO. We'd have gotten him some big wins because he was not that physically impressive. That's putting it mildly. Just Google him. You'll see what I mean. But, in the NWO, we could have, Randy and Hulk, Kevin, Scott could have taken care of the heavy duty work and let Jake the Millman come in for the big finish and get all the glory. So I think that would have been a fun comedic kind of spot.
Do you remember there ever being any conversation about you working with Vern Gagne in WCW? I know Greg Gagne was there, and we've spent a lot of time over the years talking about Greg here, there, and yon, but I know what respect and admiration you have for Vern. Was there ever a serious conversation about him being contractually obligated to WCW in some serious way?
No, I stayed in touch with Vern. He called me, or I called him, once or twice a year. And occasionally Vern called me about Brock Lesnar before Brock signed with WWE, because Vern was very much involved with the University of Minnesota wrestling program. And Vern really believed in amateur wrestling, huge support. I wish he was around now to kind of see what we're doing with Real American Freestyle, because I know he would have been really excited about that and proud of what we're doing. But, Vern was very stubborn. And Vern was locked in the 70s. It's one of the reasons why he ended up the way he ended up, because he just refused to adapt to television and wanted to promote wrestling. Bill Watts cut out of the same cloth. For guys like Bill and Vern at that time in their lives, the only approach to professional wrestling was to go back and produce professional wrestling like it was produced back in the 70s and very early 80s, because that's what Vern knew. That's what he was comfortable with. Television had advanced so much by the 90s, and Vern didn't advance with it. So there was no serious thought. I would have liked to, just out of loyalty and in a sense of comfort, and I would have liked to pick Vern's brain from time to time. But I also knew, knowing Vern as well as I did, that he would have been extremely frustrated working in a corporate environment and trying to develop television as it was in the 90s, as opposed to what it was in the 70s. I ran into the same thing with Jerry Jarrett. No offense to Jerry, nothing but respect. But I brought Jerry Jarrett in because I wanted to pick his brain. And I have, I had respect, still do, for people who were really successful during other eras, because there's always common denominators.
Yeah.
There were always parallels. There were always formulas that worked in the 70s that, you couldn't do the exact same thing, but you could modify it. You could use it as, if nothing else, as inspiration for another idea. But again, I think the frustration that guys like Jerry Jarrett probably felt, first of all, working for me, which, I get it, right? I was a C squad announcer. What am I doing running the company? And I get that. I didn't take it personally because it's understandable, but it was also kind of a roadblock in terms of really working together. There was an underlying resentment that guys like Jerry Jarrett and others felt like they shouldn't be working for this guy who was a C squad announcer and now all of a sudden is running the company. Who did he ever beat? Where did he ever promote? So there was that. And probably more than anything, one of the reasons why I didn't reach out to Vern more than I did.
It's so fascinating to me to think about, how wrestling, as you said, even though it had been a long time and the technology and maybe the delivery and the marketing and some of that had changed, like really what really works in wrestling is getting that emotional connection. And people are people. And that doesn't really change, whether it's the 60s, the 70s, the 90s, or now. If you can get people emotionally invested, and that's kind of what wrestling is at its core, is manipulating the desired response emotionally from the crowd, right?
That's all it is. It's all, any form of entertainment is getting the audience's attention, getting them to identify with a character, to feel empathy for a character, or in some cases sympathy for a character, and then take them on that emotional journey. Wrestling, dramatic television, comedic television, action, whether it's movies, television, or a book, it's all the same thing. You're providing an escape, and you're giving people an opportunity to experience emotions that they may not be able to experience, working 9 to 5. It's a relief, really. And you're right, man. The psychology, and I think that's the part that I feel Vern and guys like Jerry could have, if they would have been willing to just get comfortable with the situation they were in, because it's the psychology that always remains the same. Human nature remains the same. Now, the way you produce your shows and the attention span and all that, sure, that changes. The audience changes. The audience evolves along with everything else that they're watching. Their taste evolve with it. And you have to be able to adapt and evolve. But at its core, wrestling psychology is wrestling psychology, whether it's from the 50s, the 60s, or the 90s, or in the 2000s. And I think that's one of the things that we talk about missing with some of the product today. It's athletically far superior to anything that any of us ever watched back in the 70s and the 80s and even the 90s in most cases. Not in all, but in most. But the psychology always stays the same.
The psychology with us humans always stays the same, but unfortunately for the men, physically we start to change, and that's why Eric and I recommend Mars Men. You know, if you're listening to this, you're probably around my age. I'm 44, and it feels like in the last 10 years, all of a sudden, things have gotten more difficult. I don't know. It feels like what used to be easy is more challenging now, and nobody really talks about this stuff. You know, one day it feels like you're just crushing life, and the next day you're wondering, why does everything feel twice as hard? Well, here's the thing. Most men start losing testosterone around age 30, about 1% every year after that. And when the new year hit, I kind of treated it like a little bit of a reset. I wanted to feel energized again, not worn down. So I'm keeping it simple and doing something natural that supports my body where it needs it. That's why I started taking Mars Men. It'll help your body unlock usable testosterone so you can feel yourself again. Because here's what I've learned. Your body makes testosterone, but a lot of it gets locked up and can't be used. There's this protein called SHBG that basically handcuffs your testosterone. And even if your body's making testosterone, SHBG will lock it up so you can't access it. It's like having money in the bank, but your damn debit card doesn't work. Well, Mars Men is designed to free up that locked testosterone so your body can actually use it. I want to mention there's no synthetics, there's no needles, just real ingredients that help optimize your energy, your focus, and your strength. And I'm telling you, you're going to feel stronger physical performance. You're going to have better recovery if you're in the gym. You're going to feel more consistent. You'll have more natural energy. To be clear, this isn't like drinking a cup of coffee. It's a steadier sense of drive throughout the day, and you're going to feel better in 2026 than you have in years, because Mars Men supports healthy T levels, energy, and stamina. There's 8 different natural, clinically dosed ingredients. Things I can't even pronounce, but things I know we need. Some I know. Come on, vitamin D. We know what we're doing here. But it's all made in the USA. It's third-party tested. There's a 90-day money-back guarantee. There's no risk. That's what that means. The worst case is you don't absolutely love it, and boom, you get your money back. But over 91% of users, myself included, will report higher energy levels. Thousands of guys are feeling better with these incredible results. Go check out the reviews on their website and see for yourself. And right now, for a limited time, our listeners can get 50% off for life, plus free shipping, and you even get 3 free gifts at mengotomars.com. That's mengotomars.com. It's a perfect way to kick the new year off strong. Go right now to mengotomars.com for 50% off, plus 3 free gifts at checkout. And after you purchase, they're going to ask you how you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them 83 weeks. So, Eric, we're live on a Saturday morning, so we've got some questions rolling in here. Let's hit a few. AOTV Productions wants to know, hey, Eric, most fans find the what chants annoying. What do you think? Do you think the what chants are annoying? Were they then? Are they now? Will they be fun forever? Where are you on the what chants?
I think it's tiresome. It's disruptive. Look, when Steve Austin was in the ring, it worked, right? And it allowed the crowd to engage. But, you know, so often now, of course, we haven't seen it a lot lately, but there was a period of time for a long time when the fans would just start chanting what to be disruptive. And I get it. It was fun for them, but I've seen talent in the ring. I've been in the ring with talent that what chant really threw them off their game. It made it difficult for them to stay focused and get their timing down when they're doing something with the microphone in the ring. So it was disruptive, kind of a pain in the ass, but it was fun. When Steve was in the ring, I enjoyed it.
Is there a chant that you don't like now in 2026 that you find more popular, where it's just an eye roll to you, where you wish, oh, it's taking me out, I wish they weren't doing that? Does that exist for you?
The "This is awesome" chant, I think, is just the most obnoxious, juvenile waste of energy. It's very disruptive, and I think it takes away from the show, particularly if there's nothing really that particularly awesome going on, but the crowd is chanting "This is awesome." It's kind of like, what are you watching? But whatever. That's the one. It's always that one's always bothered me.
AOTV production says, Eric, this made me laugh. Vince Russo took a shot at CM Punk, saying he'd make a better champion than him and wouldn't have to wrestle in a t-shirt. Is he playing a character, or is that how Vince Russo really feels?
I don't know. I don't comment too much on Vince Russo. I think he's delusional as fuck. Whatever. I mean, I think it should be pretty obvious that Vince Russo is in love with Vince Russo. He's in love with the sound of his own voice. All you have to do is spend 5 minutes trying to listen to his show, and you'll figure that out. Or a promo or an interview. He loves the sound of his own voice. And he thinks he's a phenomenal character on television, which should tell you everything you need to know about Vince Russo and his understanding or ability to produce good television. The fact that he thinks he should be on air should tell you everything you need to know.
Eric, I do want to ask you, I don't know that we've talked about this, but I think our pal Kevin Nash started the discussion, and now it has become a thing. I don't know it was necessarily fair, but I want to give you a chance to sound off on it. I know once upon a time, you didn't count CM Punk as one of your absolute favorites. I know you've come around on the way he's handled the transition to WWE and Saudi Arabia and a lot of the other things that we've seen CM Punk sort of evolve through based on what our preconceived notions were. But the whole he wrestles in a t-shirt thing, that has become a topic in large part thanks to Kevin Nash. I don't think that's a big deal in the same vein that, and I'm not trying to dump on another one of our friends, like Tommy Dreamer made a career out of wrestling in a t-shirt, and so did Mick Foley, and I don't think any of that is comparing what they do to CM Punk. But TKO is now very much a merch business. I mean, they are bottom line driven. And a lot of guys, what they're wearing, he's not just wearing a random nondescript shirt from Walmart. He's wearing a piece of his own merch. I think he's trying to sell stuff. But there's this whole topic about, hey, he shouldn't wrestle in a t-shirt. He doesn't look like a wrestler. And I know Kevin Nash is saying things like, wouldn't it be easier to just go to the gym? Do you have a strong opinion about CM Punk in a t-shirt? I'll admit, I don't get it, but I can't wait to hear from you.
I don't. First of all, let me state for the record, I'm highly impressed with CM Punk, Phil Brooks, as the professional that he is currently. I had a real issue with some of the shit that he did in AEW, and I mean, it's, I was sticking up for Tony Khan at the time. The way that Punk handled some of those live interviews, I certainly understand it. Probably understand more now than I did then with regard to his level of frustration. But still, man, don't conduct your business on live television. That's just a rule. No matter how strongly you feel, conduct your business privately. And that was one of the reasons why I had the attitude I did about Phil, in addition to some of the stuff that he said about Hulk and the NWO and Scott and Kevin. I just thought it was cheap heat and felt like for all of the support that CM Punk got when he got to AEW, that there was no need to reach in your bag for the cheap heat. I was unimpressed and was vocal about it. Now let's fast forward. He's 100% pro. I've been around him just a little bit backstage, and he's got a positive attitude on the people that I saw him come into contact with. He immediately approached me, and we, said our respective piece and got along great. Gave me a big hug, and we're off and running. And if you look at In fact, I was just thinking about this the other night when we were watching Rumble. There's an authenticity to CM Punk that really cuts through. Even listening to him when he was doing the broadcast before the event, there is an authenticity to him that it just makes him different than everybody else. So I think the world of him professionally. I think he's doing a phenomenal job. Obviously his character is still clicking after all these years, and he's been able to maintain that kind of rebel with the cause character that's always been a part of him, but it's obviously working now. As far as the t-shirt thing, I don't know, man. If I was making money, if I was making a percentage of the t-shirts that had my trademark on it or my likeness on it, I'd be wearing it too. Not everybody is that larger than life bodybuilder, pro athlete looking physique. A lot of guys aren't. I think he looks like he's in great shape to me. How old is he? 45, 46?
Yeah, maybe even older than that. Yeah.
Yeah. So no comments at all, negative comments about his conditioning. He just chooses to wear the shirt. I think you're probably right. He's making money doing it. And if anybody understands that, it's Kevin Nash.
No doubt. He's still making 6 figures a year easy from the NWO t-shirt. And it's been a long time since the NWO was a thing. Punk will be 48 this year. He's 47 right now. And he's actually in the news this week. He was doing a lot of media as a part of the, press row for the Super Bowl, which, of course, as you're listening, is tomorrow. But he was asked about whether or not he had any regrets from stepping away from WWE for 10 years, which I thought was a great question. Mm-hmm. We know that, he decided to throw himself into MMA and wound up on a losing effort of a couple of UFC fights, but all the respect in the world for getting his ass out of his comfort zone and doing so very publicly. But when asked about stepping away for 10 years, he said, I'll just go ahead and say it. Like, Vince was still here. I don't think anything was ever going to change. For me, at least. So, no. Can I think about, man, that's 10 years. I could have worked with AJ a whole bunch. I could have done more with Cena. I think I did pretty good. Tribal Chief says he graciously scaled back for 2 years. Well, I graciously stepped back for 10, and it took him that long to become the superstar he is. So, no, I got no regrets. By the way, what a great answer from CM Punk in that he gives the interviewer exactly what he's looking for. Here's the information. But he still has his mind on business and curls it back to whatever his current promo is about Roman Reigns. I thought this was a great answer, but I really wanted to drill in on you. Do you think that Punk and Vince could have existed in the last 10 years, or was Vince too stuck in his ways, do you think, for Punk to be happy?
I think two things are absolutely true. Vince was stuck in his ways and wasn't about to change for CM Punk. And CM Punk was also entrenched in his perspective, in his ways, and was not going to adjust for Vince McMahon. So I think Punk's response was right on the money. And when you think about it, perhaps that 10 years away is the reason why he's successful as he is today, because the audience wanted him back, and they wanted him back for a long time. I don't know how you could look at CM Punk's career as it stands today and not think that it was very, very well managed. Even the difficult part, taking 10 years off. And you're right. He put his toe in the water in MMA, props for having the guts to do that. But, after that, he stayed relevant. He'd make appearances here and there. But he maintained his relationship with the audience. That's the fascinating thing. That's what people should be talking about with regard to CM Punk and his character and how strong of a character it is and was. When you look at someone who literally took a decade away from the business and came back with as much or more fanfare than he had when he left. I think it's pretty amazing. And it says a lot about his authenticity and who he is. His audience isn't as connected to a character as they are to the individual. And that's impressive.
Speaking of impressive, if you want to impress your loved one, your gal, can't believe it, Valentine's Day is a week away, but it's not too late with I Hate Steven Singer. You know what I love? Beautiful sunsets. Come on, imagine you're on vacation with your sweetheart. You gaze into their eyes and you see that beautiful sunset. Buddy, you're in love. What if you could feel that every day, or at least be reminded of that in-love sunset vacation feeling? Well, now you can with Steven Singer's brand new Sunset 24-karat gold-dipped rose. Picture it, a rose that perfectly captures sunset hues going from deep purple to vibrant pink to soft orange. It's nothing like you've ever seen before. Steven's famous gold-dipped roses are a real rose dipped in pure 24-karat gold, guaranteed to last a lifetime. Steven Singer makes Valentine's Day shopping easy, so don't wait. Valentine's Day is next Saturday. Go right now to IHateStevenSinger.com and order your Sunset Gold Dipped Rose for just $89. You'll even get free shipping to arrive in time for Valentine's Day. Exclusively and only at Steven Singer Jewelers. That's IHateStevenSinger.com. Eric, we've got some big news that's not necessarily positive news. It felt like it was a foregone conclusion for the last few years since he was injured, but Big E made it official on social media for anyone who was curious. I entered the pro wrestling industry at age 23 with an injury history that included a torn left ACL, a torn right ACL, a torn left pec, and a broken right patella. At 39, I'm well aware that I will one day have to pay the piper. I've put my body through a lot, and somehow I feel great. I don't battle daily pain. I'm able to function normally and healthily. I'm eternally grateful for the wonderful career I stumbled into. I pray for all of my fellow athletes and performers who have not had the same good fortune. A sincere thank you to everyone who's taken the time to follow my in-ring career. It was an immeasurable gift to get to perform for you all. So it's that last sentence. It was. It feels like it is official. Big E is announcing his retirement from in-ring action. We know he's going on to become a talking head or an analyst for WWE. I think he's done a great job in that. He was one of the more entertaining characters in WWE for a long, long time. A lot of people thought, hey, this could be the guy, and his career was cut short so early. I mean, even now, just 39 years old, he's still not hit wrestler prime, but, well, the Lord had other plans. What do you think about Big E's announcement and his career in retrospect?
What an amazingly classy person, and I can't wait to see him again and shake his hand and congratulate him on an amazing career. And it makes me smile when I hear people like Big E who appreciate the opportunity for what it really was, to be able to go out and perform in front of thousands of people who are there because they want to have fun. And you're able to be out there in the ring with your opponent or with somebody else and be able to go out there and perform and deliver that. It is a gift. And to be able to walk away from it, or perhaps he's not walking away from the business, but he's walking away from the in-ring portion of the business, to be able to do that with gratitude as opposed to anger and bitterness or feeling sorry for yourself because of an injury. I'm always disappointed when I hear people react that way, because I know that 5 years from now, 10 years from now, take it from me, I know what I'm talking about. You look back and you look at things completely differently than you did in the moment. And I know a lot of these guys, sometimes they sound bitter or disappointed or angry, whatever. You hate to hear that, because you know at some point they're going to regret saying it, and they're going to realize that it was a blessing. They've had this unique opportunity to do what so few people ever get a chance to do. Forget about wrestling. As an entertainer, to be able to go out at a high level on a worldwide stage and perform your craft and to connect with the audience. Yeah, it's a tough business. There's no question about it. It takes its toll in many ways. But at the end of it all, it's a gift. And I'm glad that Big E realizes it now while he's still a part of it, because it'll allow him to enjoy the next chapter of his career even more. So I'm really happy for him.
I think so many of the accomplishments of the modern era are sort of glossed over. I know that a lot of fans my age, we celebrate, the stuff that happened when we were younger fans, but I just want to run through some of the accolades and accomplishments that Big E's had. He was an NXT champion. He was the Intercontinental champion on 2 occasions. He held the Raw tag team titles with New Day twice. He held the SmackDown tag team titles 6 times. I think they're the longest reigning tag team champions in history, passing Demolition. I know he won the men's Money in the Bank in 2021, and I know he cashed in to become WWE champion. And I think that kind of gets glossed over. But when you really take a look at his career,
it's a hell of a career.
He did it all, like world title, NXT title, IC, all the tags, longest reigning tags. And by the way, he made it look fun. I mean, if I was going to describe New Day in a word, I think that would be the word fun. And so often in wrestling, we focus on the serious, but the silly is needed. Like I knew people. I had a great aunt who loved New Day. And when my daughter was really young, she loved New Day. And when you can get a character that fans love, whether they're young or old, it has to be rooted in fun, at least in my opinion. And I think Big E was probably the epitome of that on some level.
Well, you look at New Day, I mean, they could deliver in the ring. There's no question about it. Once the bell rung, what they did in the ring was as serious as anybody else's matches. But their characters were fun. When I was there in 2019, I saw firsthand the way the crowd reacted to New Day. When they came through the curtain, so to speak, when they came down the stage, the crowd was waiting for them. They were anticipating New Day. They wanted to have that New Day experience that they associated with their walkout. And that is an important part of wrestling. It's not all intense conflict, violence. You need that. I don't want to say comedic relief, but you need that lighthearted entertainment to kind of balance some of the more intensive or intense, I should say, action that you bring or stories that you bring. So you need a balance. And New Day provided that balance until the bell rung, and then they went in and delivered in an impressive way. So, it's funny. You talk about all the accolades that Big E should be proud of at this point, and he accomplished all of those things before he reached typical wrestling prime. Right? He's just now knocking on the door, really, of that sweet spot, because you've been in the business for such a long period of time. You've got your own fan base that have grown up in some respects watching you or evolving with you as their fandom evolves. To think that he was able to accomplish all of that in the period of time that he had, which is a relatively short period of time, is even more impressive.
One of the things I wanted to ask you about, it's hard to believe, but we're coming up on the 4-year anniversary next month of when his career came to an end. Of course, we know it was an errant over-the-head, belly-to-belly suplex on the floor from Ridge Holland, and I guess he fractures his C1 and C6 vertebrae, but there was no spinal cord injury. But that was it. No more in-ring for Big E after that. I wanted to ask, do you think that's an evolution of wrestling? Like once upon a time, it feels like if a guy had an injury like this in the 80s or 90s or even the early 2000s, the individual and the company would have been hand in hand in, oh, we'll figure it out later. Let's rub some dirt on it. And they would have probably been playing with fire. But it feels like now we're being more cautious. I'm grateful for that. But I wanted to know, do you think if a Big E type injury happened on Nitro back in the day, and all I can think about as we're talking about this is the Buff Bagwell Thunder incident. I'm not saying it's the same. I'm not saying it's identical, but I'm saying it does feel like one positive change, because I know there's a lot of people who say, oh, I miss the way wrestling used to be. I think it's like this as a positive change where, hey, for once, it feels like we're putting their performers' well-being first and foremost. What would you say?
Well, look, so much has changed for professional wrestlers, particularly those in WWE or even AEW, because it's my understanding that Tony does a pretty good job of taking care of talent who've been injured, right? That's different, right? It wasn't that way back in the 60s and the 70s and even the 80s, right? Or even some of the 90s. It wasn't that way. It wasn't until both companies, WWE and WCW, started getting bigger when litigation and lawsuits and we just had to start operating differently. It wasn't the small local, territory promoter that could get away with whatever, or wrestlers who could keep an injury secret because they didn't want to lose an opportunity. That happened as much as, probably promoters asking people to go out and work hurt. There were probably just as many, if not more, wrestlers who were hurt that didn't want to tell the promoter because they didn't want to lose an opportunity. Both of those situations combined resulted in a lot of people that both you and I know very closely and personally who have a hard time walking through an airport today, or are just uncomfortable sitting down and watching television because of neck or back or hip injuries. So I think it's a positive advancement. I think it's one of the things that has come along with the explosive growth of professional wrestling as an entertainment property comes the responsibility along with it. And I think that's a benefit to talent today.
Well, let's talk about our friends over at Policy Genius. I'm really glad to hear that Big E has all of his priorities together and he's going to be able to move forward happy in life. And I want to make sure that the rest of your family can do the exact same thing. I was overwhelmed on Christmas Eve, just surrounded by my family opening their presents in what we call our tall den. That's our formal living room, I guess, but we're almost never in there. But when we were surrounded by the big goofy Christmas tree, I was just kind of overcome with, man, I'm really happy with the family life that we have built together. And I take my responsibility as sort of the provider of the household to make sure that this thing keeps going. Policy Genius is going to give me that peace of mind. And I want you to start the new year with clarity and security. Listen, it's a weighty responsibility to worry about protecting your loved ones and the financial planning, and all of that for the future can be overwhelming at times. And that's why I turned to Policy Genius, because I think finding the right insurance policy can ease that weight. And I want you to lock in your life insurance today. Let me explain what Policy Genius is. It's an online insurance marketplace that allows you to compare quotes from some of America's top insurers. And you can do this side by side for free. Their licensed team will help you get what you need fast so you can get on with your life. You'll easily find what you need, the coverage amounts, the prices, the terms. There's no guesswork, just clarity. Policy Genius will help you find your most affordable policy that meets your needs. They'll answer all your questions, handle your paperwork, and advocate for you throughout the process. Policy Genius has thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot from customers who found their best policy fit for their needs. So plan this year knowing that you've protected what you've built. With Policy Genius, you can see if you can find 20-year life insurance policies starting at just $276 a year for $1 million in coverage. Head on over right now to policygenius.com/83 weeks to compare life insurance quotes from top companies and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/83 weeks.
It's time for the Wrestling News Update with Raj Giri.
All right. One of my favorite parts of the show every week. Raj Giri joining us live here. We greatly appreciate you jumping in with us, man. There's so much to talk about. Where should we start today, Raj?
I think one of the big things that happened in the past couple of weeks is the ratings. Nielsen, they updated their methodology again that really benefits cable shows, and we've seen it. We've seen an uptick in all the cable TV show TV ratings. We've seen an uptick in Dynamite, SmackDown, Collision. They're all doing their best numbers this past week since Nielsen changed their methodology last September. So some good news on the ratings front for pro wrestling.
Let's talk a little bit about that. I saw, of course, you have your critics online, and I get tagged in that every now and again because we have some fun here on 83 Weeks. And I saw someone when they posted a great rating from Dynamite, they were like, oh, I wonder how Raj and his fellow grifters, I guess that's me and you, Eric, are going to talk about this. But this wasn't like a unique change for AEW. It was for all of cable ratings, right, Raj?
Absolutely, yeah. And it was specific to cable ratings because if you look at all the hit broadcast TV shows over that week the change went into place, and you look at the ratings the week before, they're pretty much the same. So, yeah, the methodology changed. Dynamite actually, the viewership was up again this week, so this would be the second week after the change. Was up slightly. It was 653 last week, 654 this week. So, a slight change, but the 18 to 49 number saw a big increase. So I don't know if they've tweaked it even more, but it went from a 0.09 last week to a 0.15 this week. So I don't know if it was the show. I've always, when we did get the quarter hours, MJF and Kenny Omega, really two of the biggest movers in numbers, and they were both wrestling on that show. So I don't know if they tweaked it further or it was just the show and the wrestlers involved. Andrade has been hot since returning to AEW, and him and Omega was, kind of a big match. So that probably has something to do with it too. But yeah, I mean, overall, it was across the board. It wasn't just AEW. It was also SmackDown. SmackDown doing their biggest numbers since the change. Still, so I did get the Fast Nationals for SmackDown last week, and the Fast Nationals were here. Let me take a look here. It was 1.4 million viewers with 432,000 in 18 to 49. So usually there's a 10% uptick with that. So you add 10% to that, and you're closer to 1.5 million. Is probably what SmackDown would have done under the old panel only rating system, but still, it was still way up from recent weeks. This past week it did 1.26 million viewers with a 0.29, the 1.26. Again, the highest since September when the ratings change went into effect.
I want to ask you a little bit about these ratings, and specifically what I'm looking for is, do you have a feel for how this has at all affected advertising? Was the old way not around long enough for it to have a meaningful effect? Is this something that you're seeing being championed and discussed outside of the wrestling bubble? What context can you give us about the way the ratings changed, maybe affected the financials?
Well, it was a concern. I've talked to people who were definitely concerned about the change in the ratings and how much lower, in particular, the 18 to 49 numbers were. Because it just happened in September, I don't know if we've really seen that effect. Nielsen, and I think it just goes to show just how little tweaks that Nielsen does and how much the numbers change, just how unreliable those numbers really kind of are. Really, the most reliable numbers that you see are the Netflix hours viewed, because that's actual homes that are actually watching. It's not a sample size. It's not tweaking the methodology they do for views, but for actual hours viewed, that is the most accurate number that is actually available out there. Nielsen has they've kind of shown their ass a little bit with how much they can really tweak stuff and just change the ratings. And it's not like all of a sudden there's 500,000 more viewers or 300,000 more viewers watching SmackDown this week. It's just a change that Nielsen made. So, I mean, it's always been the case with Nielsen. Anytime you're doing a small sample size to represent a larger universe, it's gonna have its flaws.
Guys, isn't it? I mean, it's really interesting when you think about this in the advertising context, Conrad, because streaming, we all know, streaming and the expansion of it has dramatically affected the television business. I mean, all you have to do is watch any of your big networks, look at some of their primetime programming. It is not nearly what it was in many respects 10, 15, 20 years ago. And that's because of streaming. A lot of the best content, whether it's action, drama, whatever it may be, is available on streaming platforms. So the quality of the product that's available on cable television and network television has greatly diminished because the budgets for those projects have been devastated because of streaming. So streaming has caused the money in the entertainment business to be spread about so much so now that it's greatly affecting programming in cable and network. But if you look at the impact that streaming has had on the advertising business as it relates specifically to Nielsen, because Nielsen was the only game in town. Madison Avenue in New York, the advertising center of the universe, was totally built upon and dependent upon Nielsen ratings. It was the only way to score. Well, now with streaming, there are other ways to score and more accurate ways to score. So even though I took my first meeting with Nielsen in September of 1987, 30 days after I went to work for Vern Gagne, Mike Shields, who handled all of Vern's business. And Vern, by the way, subscribed to Nielsen. He wasn't just ripping shit off out of a weekly magazine and using that the way, aggregators do as social media. Vern subscribed to Nielsen. So we got a much more in-depth reporting than you would typically get in a Nielsen report that was available more or less to the public. But it was the only game in town. There was no choice. It was their rules, their scoring system, or don't play. Well, now with streaming, there's another way. And I think that's the pressure that's on Nielsen right now, is now Nielsen has to adapt. Networks have had to adapt. Cable outlets have had to adapt. Directors, writers, producers, actors, actresses, agents have had to adapt. And now Nielsen has to adapt. And this is what we're seeing now, and I find it to be really fascinating.
I do want to ask, as we're taking a look at, Raj, I know you've been a bigger critic creatively of AEW than I have, but I told Eric last week when we were spending some time together in Atlanta that I felt like last week's Dynamite was one of the best in a long time. And I'll admit, we had some family stuff going on. I haven't seen this week's, but my AEW friends tell me that this week's show was even better than last week. It feels like there's a lot of fans who maybe have changed their opinion about AEW creative, with the way the booking's handling, with the way everyone is after the world title. There's been a lot of great quality matches. I heard you just give some love to Andrade. Do you feel like the show is hitting its stride differently creatively, Raj?
I do think it's been a lot better this year. A couple of years ago, when they were showing that CM Punk footage and the Young Bucks were taking over the show, like, it had gotten really bad creatively, and you really saw a nosedive. Pretty much across the board, attendance, ratings, everything imaginable. And now, and I think a lot of it is putting faith in the people that have really been draws since the beginning. MJF, Kenny Omega, I've always felt like you kind of put the focus on them and it kind of raises the show up. And they've been doing that. And Andrade has really, they've really done a great job since he's come back. So I feel like all those things are hitting. This thing about multiple people going after the world title, they've done that so many times before. I mean, how many times have there been multiple people in a world title main event on a pay-per-view? So I don't think it's that. I think it's more the people involved. And I think Omega, MJF, Andrade, and that is hitting, it does seem like. But also the change in the Nielsen system, and we'll just have to see. I mean, we're seeing it across the board. But still, even with the change in the Nielsen system, the ratings for Dynamite this past week were really good.
Well, ratings aside, no, I haven't watched AEW, so I can't comment. But Conrad, I'll take what you're saying at absolutely face value because I trust your judgment. If the creative is starting to tighten up, which is a good thing, whether it's because, as Raj is pointing out, we're putting the focus on the right people, and some of those people are back now. Kenny Omega's been out for a while. Now he's back. So maybe putting the emphasis on the right people like MJF and Kenny Omega and others that are good, solid ratings getters now that they're back healthy. Perhaps this is the pressure that TNA is putting on AEW. Everybody talks about competition being good. WWE is so much better when, WCW was competing, or the hope was that, AEW was going to put some creative pressure on WWE. That never really happened. But you've got AEW and their loyal fan base. Say whatever you want about them. You cannot deny that they are incredibly loyal, which is a valuable thing to have, a loyal audience. Now there's a little pressure on Tony and company to up their game because they don't want to get beat by TNA, just like WWE didn't want to get beat by WCW or didn't want to get beat by AEW. So now Tony has some pressure on him creatively because he's not just the underdog, the quote unquote challenger brand. He's also now needs to hold on to a number 2 position. And there is some legitimate, although it may be mostly perception at this point, there is some legitimate pressure on AEW and their fan base because TNA is breathing down their back.
Yeah, and that is an excellent point. And I do think, the first 2 weeks with TNA being on AMC and beating Collision, and granted, obviously Collision's the B show, but it's still TNA, which has a fraction of the budget and a fraction of the star power, and beating their number 2 show in 18 to 49. I'm sure that probably, was a little bit of a wake-up call. Like, we can't just be on cruise control, and we need to start taking this seriously, because
particularly in a company that is so social media intense.
Centric.
Yeah, absolutely.
Raj, I want to ask you, do you know, and again, I'm asking blindly here, I don't know the answer to the question I'm about to ask. Do you know how the ratings were last week for Collision relative to TNA? Because I know that last Saturday was a unique situation for AEW. I think a lot of wrestling fans get a little bit of a hangover after they watch so much wrestling. So with Royal Rumble being essentially a matinee show here in America, and then that night you had Collision, I wondered, how will you get wrestling fans who felt like, oh, I've had my fill of wrestling today? How would you get them re-engaged? And I thought Tony did a great job of, let's introduce Tommaso Ciampa on Wednesday and tell you that he's going to make his in-ring debut on the B show on Saturday for the title against one of our more beloved characters. And they also had Okada, who almost never works Collision, fresh off of his Tokyo Dome performance against almost like an indie darling in Adam Priest. That felt very... I know early on we heard Tony Khan on Busted Open, and he gave a great compliment to Eric about Nitro. He said something like, I love the randomness of Nitro matches. Where else would you see Perry Saturn versus Rick Martel or Bobby Eaton versus Randy Savage? So we saw Adam Priest versus Okada, fresh off of a Tokyo Dome main event. That felt like, hey, he is making a concerted effort to load up the Saturday night show. And I felt like he was doing that, A, to overcome the, I just watched the Rumble, I don't know that I can convince my wife to watch 2 more hours of wrestling. And B, maybe I don't want to lose market share and accidentally have TNA beat me this week. Do you know what happened last week? What were the numbers?
Yeah, so Collision, they did their, realistically, it was probably their best numbers. And again, this is the first Collision since Nielsen updated their methodology, but they did 492,000 viewers and a 0.07. Now, the week before, with the old system, they did 253,000 viewers and a 0.02. So that was basically a 95% uptick in viewership and a 250% uptick in the 18 to 49 rating. So again, a lot of that is Nielsen changing their methodology, but a lot of it is exactly what you said. Tony Khan loading up that show. It wasn't head-to-head with the Royal Rumble. When they're head-to-head, you usually see a drastic decrease in viewers for Collision. Pretty much almost any time it happened. I mean, even last week, that was against Saturday Night's Main Event when it did the 0.02, which was their lowest of all time. So I think loading up that show, having a guy come in from WWE right off the bat and getting a title shot, I think that all worked. And it was a smart idea that paid off. So that 492,000 viewers, it was their best viewership for that show since... I mean, if you look at it realistically, as a 2-hour show on a Saturday night in the normal time slot, it was, and without a big lead-in, because there have been episodes where they had an NBA lead-in. So without the lead-in, it was the best number of viewership that they had in over a year. So it shows that they can do numbers on Saturday night. It's not at times it feels like they're just letting the show die. Before that episode, they hadn't done over 200,000 viewers in this regular time slot since, I believe, since August. So. Yeah, you book it right, and the viewers will probably come.
Well, congrats to Tony and AEW, and big congrats to Adam Priest. I'm going to give all the credit to him for the rating last week. Of course, I'm kidding, but I'm a homer. Hey, I do want to ask you about the Royal Rumble. You know, Raj, we've seen a lot of reports about how financially successful the weekend was. I don't pretend to have any insight as to what that looks like, but I did see some rumblings that it looks like they're not going back to Saudi for the Rumble next year. It will be domestic. We know next year Saudi's going to get the Royal Rumble. What can you tell us about the economics of this past weekend in Saudi?
Well, we don't know because it was a sold show, so they're not getting any of the ticket sales or anything like that. But it was a sold out show. It was a weird one because the lighting, the way they did the lighting, and they admittedly know that it was a mistake the way it was done. It made it look like it was empty, and it was one of those weird visual tricks that if you look at photos and you zoom in and you see it looks empty, and then you zoom in and you see people there. And then also scalpers had bought up all the tickets, or most of the tickets, and charged them at really high prices. So a $25 in US general admission ticket was going for like $250. So at the end of the show, it was about 90% full. So the scalpers didn't unload all of the tickets, but it was 90% full. The one thing is, it's rumored that the amount that WWE made off of the show, usually with a normal Saudi show, it's 40 to 50 million. This was rumored to be about 100 million or above. And to kind of put that in perspective, last year's Royal Rumble did about 70,000 fans. It was the most successful non-WrestleMania WWE event that they've ever done, and that did 17 million in ticket sales. So you're talking over 5 times that amount that they made for the Saudi show. So, when people are like, see, this is why they shouldn't go to Saudi and things like that. But you look at the economics, you're talking over 5 times that amount for this one show, over 5 times their largest non-WrestleMania gate. And last year's Rumble beat a lot of WrestleManias as well. Actually, most WrestleManias outside of a few. So, just a huge moneymaker. And so when you see them doing these pay-per-views out, these PLEs out in Saudi Arabia, you know why.
Yeah, it's probably one of the reasons why Mark Shapiro came out and said both WWE and UFC are $20 billion companies.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're money-making machines right now. And but you also don't, no matter how much money you're making, popularity can be a fleeting thing, as we've seen over the years. So you still want to keep the creative strong. I think they hit a home run with the CM Punk Roman Reigns stuff. But you definitely want to keep the creative strong, and you don't want that to fall, because it wasn't that long ago when they weren't selling out these arenas and charging and being able to charge these high ticket prices. So you definitely don't want to rest on your laurels.
That promo was great, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
You get excited about a promo because I've seen and been a part of some really good ones. That was a great promo. I would have liked to have just been the referee in the ring at that point. That was a good. That struck all the chords. I think to be critical, there were a couple periods during that promo when I went, oh, I wish they would have just left that out. You know what I mean? Because there was a point in the middle where it felt like it was just not moving anywhere. It was starting to slow down a little bit. And, once you get them and you've got their attention, you want to hold on to them. You don't want to feel like you're losing them. And I think it just got a little verbose, much like I do on this show. It got a little verbose in the middle, but then it finished so strong. It was a classic promo. I loved it.
Yeah, it did feel like it was tapering off a little bit, and then Roman started cooking and took it home.
It's funny watching Roman, and I'm going to go back and watch this one. I'd like to watch it with somebody who was really interested in learning how to do a great promo, and just keep the audio off and just focus on facial expressions. Because that's when Roman, when he finally hit his gear, and I was waiting for him to go, man, I mean, I don't know Roman well enough to have a sense of his timing or his cadence or anything like that, but I'm thinking, come on, dude, what are you waiting for? They're waiting for you. Why are you holding back? And then once he let it go, and he did it, with facial expressions, you could see the gears in his brain start changing, and you could see it all on his face. It was really, really well done.
Yeah, and it was one of those where you don't know where the fiction ends and the reality begins, and I think that sometimes makes wrestling the best. And
when you can find that, when you've got a real issue that the audience is aware of, you're not building the whole story on it, but you can throw that little bit of that backstory in here or there to help tie it all together. And what that does is it makes it believable. You're giving the audience permission to believe that this is real because they're telling you things, they're using things that you know are true. Therefore, it allows you to believe what you're seeing and hearing, therefore, is true, or at least it could be. That's the magic of taking a real life situation and finding the right way to weave it into a current story. I loved it.
Yeah. And just off of that one promo, it kind of feels like the biggest WrestleMania match, singles match that they've had in a long time.
And you know, I'm sorry, guys, I just get excited about this stuff. And the mistake that a lot of less experienced performers, and by that I mean people that haven't been doing it at a high level for 10 years, the mistake they make when they bring in the backstory is they rely too much on it. It becomes the focus of the story. And that's old news. People won't care. But the way they just kind of salt and peppered it in here and there, again, I thought it was really, really well done.
Raj, I want to ask you a little bit about the Royal Rumble. I know that a lot of us, myself included, we kind of expected Chris Jericho to be there. He was not. We did see the debut of Royce Keys, but I thought that even that was interesting and worth pointing out. Eric, do you remember a time in history where WWE acknowledged someone's previous name? Like the big Jumbotron said Powerhouse Hobbs, and then it transitioned into Royce Keys, and even the lower third said formerly known as Powerhouse Hobbs. I almost never remember seeing that. I can't think of another time when I remember seeing that. What did you make of that, Eric? And then, Raj, I want to hear from you. When do we think we'll see Chris Jericho?
I thought it was really awkward. And in fact, I think we talked about this perhaps the week before, and we talked about, is this the right time to introduce Royce Keys? And I thought not, for the very reason that the audience didn't know how to react to him. It's like they wanted to react, but they didn't know what or who they were reacting to. And then to stutter step, you literally brought the audience in by tripping them. It's like, come on into my house. Come on in. Have a glass of wine. Have some dinner. Oh, trip. Sorry. Didn't mean to trip you. They tripped up the audience with that Powerhouse Hobbs and then transition to Royce Keys. It was confusing and awkward. And really surprised me. That's not typically a WWE kind of move. I thought it was a fumble conceptually, and I'm pretty sure I'm right. And in fairness, we won't really know if I'm right or not because that was not the right audience to do it to. Had they tried that same device to introduce Royce Keys in the U.S. in front of a U.S. domestic audience, perhaps. But man, it was like a double whammy. You know, you're introducing somebody that the local audience really doesn't know, and you're doing it with a stutter step, which is bizarre.
Yeah, you're exactly right. We did talk about that last week, how debuting him in Saudi Arabia would be the wrong move. Because AEW doesn't air on television out there. They're on a streaming service, I believe it's called Stars Play, that has 2.5 million subscribers total over the entire Middle East. So it's a really small amount of people that are watching AEW. And I know, like, when I say, you know, no one Saudi is watching AEW, that's why Powerhouse Hobbs, you know, got no reaction. And then I have people being like, hey, there was an AEW sign in the crowd. Literally, you know, I mean, literally zero people are watching AEW, but vast majority are not. They're not familiar with who he is. And we discussed it last week that it would be a mistake debuting him there. They did. He got a very mild reaction. And I just think if they would have waited till Monday in Philly, that first reaction would have been a lot bigger. But, you know, that being said, in the long run, it doesn't matter. If he's going to get over, he's going to get over. But it is always nice seeing that first reaction, you know, because sometimes, you know, those are the memories that last. Like AJ Styles when he first debuted at the Royal Rumble, you always remember that moment. Or Chris Jericho coming in. So it felt like a an opportunity that kind of went to waste. But again, if he's going to be a star, he's going to be a star regardless. As for Chris Jericho, still on the AEW roster page. He's playing it close to the vest. He's not tipping his hand. So who knows? I mean, did he sign an extension with AEW? Has Tony Khan added time to his contract for, missing time for concerts and things like that? I mean, all those things are possibilities. Tony Khan has added time in the past to guys when they were injured and things like that, which is a common practice that WWE does. So, I mean, those could all be possibilities. But, that makes it more fun not knowing. And, knowing Chris Jericho in the past, when people kind of got tipped off to when he was going to show up, he did try to get him off the scent. So we'll see where he pops up. I still think it's going to be WWE. I think it'd be most effective in WWE. And, we saw this with WWF and WCW. The going back and forth just really freshens up talent and gives them a fresh coat of paint. So, I think it really would benefit Jericho to move, just like there are some guys in WWF I think could WWE, that could benefit by moving to AEW.
But you look at Chris Jericho, first of all, I think financially he's probably very, very, very well set. I don't think Chris is going to necessarily do something just for the money, but let's be honest about it. If Chris has the opportunity and Tony is still interested in Chris from just a purely financial perspective, AEW would be a better choice. Because Chris is not going to make the amount of money in WWE, on a one-year farewell tour that he could conceivably make at AEW over the next 3 years.
Yeah.
If you were a betting man, Raj, do you think we'll see Jericho at Elimination Chamber, WrestleMania, the Monday after WrestleMania? What do you think makes the most sense at this point, Raj?
I think we'll see him. If I was putting money on it, I would bet that we see Jericho in WWE by the summer.
Yeah, I think that's a safe bet. I would go so far as to say I think it's going to be WrestleMania weekend, and I'll include Monday on that. But between Saturday, Sunday, Monday, it feels like you're going to be looking for some big surprise or some new way to kick off a new exciting thing. And if you'll recall, Goldberg, made the jump from WCW, or I guess WCW had folded, but he made his WWE debut the Monday after WrestleMania. It feels like dropping him in the Monday after you finish a lot of your major stories, Eric, could be the best possible timing for Jericho.
It's kind of brilliant. It falls into the brilliant category. That would be the smartest move you could make.
Isn't that wild too? You mentioned Goldberg. Like Austin's last match was the night before, and Goldberg's WWE debut was the next day. We're that close. Yes. It felt like to getting an Austin Goldberg dream match. It just never happened.
Anything else on the radar this week, Raj, we need to hit for you?
I think that's about it. Yeah. Those were the major items. Obviously, the Royal Rumble, and now all eyes on WrestleMania. And then, we're gonna have WrestleMania in Saudi. Hopefully, they fix a lot of the problems that they had with the Royal Rumble, especially as insignificant as it sounds. The lighting was definitely a big issue.
No, I was watching with Conrad. We were both sitting there with our ad-free shows family. We're watching on the big screen, and Conrad's sitting right next to me. We're looking at each other going, are there people in those? What? The place is half empty. And then where you could tell on where we could tell on television is when the house lights went up. Like if there was something happening arena-wide, they would bring the house lights up, and then you could see there were bodies in those seats. But as soon as the house lights would come back down because the action was now in the ring, then all you saw was those little glowing headlights. It just really was distracting visually.
Yeah, it seemed like they were trying to copy the Intuit Dome, which is where they had the Raw Netflix debut, which had all those red lights. But it didn't work. So, and they know it, so I'm sure they'll fix it. It is interesting to build a stadium for one show. And it's because you don't have the benefit of hindsight and being able to test things out. And it's go and then suffer the consequences. So
that would have been really interesting to be sitting in Gorilla next to Vince McMahon when that live crowd came up and it looked like there was nobody there. Can you imagine the audio track that you'd have been able to lift from that scene?
Yeah, he would have lost it
on the show.
Well, Raj, tell everybody how they can keep up with you every week on social media.
Yeah, follow me on Twitter at the Raj Giri. And thanks again, guys. Appreciate it.
No,
Thanks for
Thanks,
having me
Raj.
on.
Good to see you again.
we're going to talk a little bit more about AJ Styles and the Royal Rumble, but first, let's talk about Better Wild. You know, you heard Eric talking about how much he loves his dog Nikki, and he's got some separation anxiety. Well, I love my dogs, and I know you love yours. But did you know that them scratching their ears or licking their paws is not normal dog behavior? I did not. These are actually signs of allergies. Allergies will flare up in your dog when the bad bacteria takes over the gut. It turns out like 90% of your dog's immune system lives in their gut. And just like us humans, our dogs need probiotics or that good bacteria to strengthen their gut. That's why my wife and I started using Better Wild Allergy Relief Soft Chews for our pups. This is a supplement designed to support your pet's allergy defense system by strengthening their digestion. They're the first and only chews with the Ancestral Advantage Wolf probiotics. You're going to combine 4 key ingredients: a premium blend of wolf probiotics called the Ancestral Advantage. You also get the L-Sacii, and you get the colostrum and the salmon oil. The result is, after 2 months of daily use, our dogs are no longer scratching their ears or licking their paws. They're happier, they're healthier, and I feel better about it. Better Wild is committed to helping your dogs with science-backed, veterinarian-approved solutions that you can feel great about. You're going to boost their immune function. You're going to fight off inflammation. You're going to reduce the itchiness and redness. And you're also going to support healthy skin and fur. Right now, Better Wild is offering our listeners up to 40% off your order at betterwild.com/Bischoff. That's betterwild.com/Bischoff for up to 40% off your order. betterwild.com/Bischoff. So, Eric, I'm excited for us to talk about some more news and notes that we've got this week. I definitely want to talk about AJ Styles, but we've still got a great live studio audience. I want to hit some of these questions and see what we got going here. King of Arts 316 says, Mr. Bischoff, in your expert opinion, how can WWE have better shows instead of the bullshit it is now? I have seen some pushback, and I don't know if you've seen this, but it feels like there is an undercurrent of anti-Triple H sentiment building on the IWC. Maybe they think he's overexposed. I don't know if you've seen the cover of the new video games, but I guess there's a lot of different alternate covers. He's on most of them. He did the intro video at the Royal Rumble. He's definitely positioned himself to be out front. And I wonder how much of the criticism of the booking is really just, oh, I'm tired of seeing this guy. He's overexposed. I think you're uniquely qualified to answer this because when you were on top of the mountain in WCW, you were not only running things behind the scenes, but you were a fabulous on-screen character. So even guys like Dave Meltzer, who would be complimentary of your on-camera work, they would say, maybe there was too much Bischoff on this show. Do you think that Triple H is tipping the scales in that direction, or is this anti-WWE booking stuff coming from somewhere else?
I think it's a combination of a number of things. I think it's, first of all, it's the internet wrestling community who, by their nature, are miserable fucks for the most part, and just need something to complain about because they feel like they're part of something if they're part of a group that is being critical. It's just the nature, and it's not just wrestling. It's social media. So it's just that kind of ambient noise, if you will, that's a part of the internet wrestling community. That's number one. Number two, I can kind of see what's happening maybe from a slightly different perspective. I don't think Paul Levesque, the individual, feels any need to push himself. In fact, I'm pretty certain that if you sat down and talked to Paul, he probably would prefer not to. He would probably prefer to push the stars. But here's the reality. Stars come and go for whatever reason. Hopefully because they've had a long career and they ended up riding off into the sunset and come back like the Undertaker and are part of the team, but in a much different way, where you're no longer out in front. Corporately, you need that face of the company, not face of the ring necessarily, but you need that executive who is the face of your brand. It was Vince McMahon. Now it's Paul Levesque. So from a corporate perspective, if I'm Mark Shapiro or Ari Emanuel in particular, or Nick Khan. I want my number one corporate exec to be just as familiar to the business community as he or she would be to the wrestling community. So Paul Levesque is in a unique situation in the sense that he was front and center, in many respects, the face of the company, if not the face, the co-face of the co-face. I don't think anybody's ever used that one before, but it's a good one. He was the co-face of the company for the last 20 years. So he's going to be, he would have been and always will be such a big part of the history of WWE. But now he's the corporate executive that also needs to be commercialized as the face of the brand. So as a wrestling fan, you're now seeing Paul Levesque everywhere. And of course, the natural tendency, particularly among the wrestling community, is he's just trying to get himself over. He's hogging the camera time. He's making it all about him. I am 100% sure that is not the case. And I'm almost as sure that if Paul had his choice, he wouldn't be doing it. Not to the extent that he is. But unless you've been there, it's hard to see both sides of that coin.
Here's one. Awesome Sauce says, what are your thoughts on wrestling becoming more political? I don't like it. Wrestling is an escape. Crowds chanting Constitution like Congress is watching or cares. This comes up, of course, because we've seen on the WWE side of things, Triple H is a part of, I guess, Trump's cabinet. He's a regular visitor to the White House as a part of their commitment to physical fitness. And I think earlier this week on Dynamite, I haven't seen the episode, but I've seen some clips online where there was an F-Ice chant before the main event with Brody King and MJF. And as a rule, we don't talk about politics here on the show. We want this to be your fun escape. But I think this is a great question. Should wrestling shy away from politics, Eric, or is that even possible now in 2026?
Yes, it's possible. And yes, wrestling should avoid becoming a political platform at all costs possible. Practical. You know, you want to go out there you want to start, look, go woke, go broke. You don't have to believe me. You may not disagree. You may not agree with anything that I have to say from a business perspective, and that's fine. But take a look at what's happening to companies that are stepping out in front of these social political issues. They're burning to the ground. They no longer even call the fire department. They just let it burn to the ground. It's stupid. It's not going to help. Look at the controversy around the NFL right now. It's just, when you embrace that, you also embrace the 50% or more, depending on what you're embracing, of the audience that feels just as strongly against the things that you believe in as you believe in them. Why would you do that? Why would you intentionally promote that? Are you stupid? Do you just not understand? Because guess what? It's not just your company's brand that you're choosing to embrace these political, particularly the hot button issues. You're choosing that. That's your choice. It's your company. It's your brand. But how does your network feel about that? How do the advertisers, who are way more sensitive to that stuff because they understand far more than you do as a wrestler or as a fan or even as a producer, they understand far more acutely than you do the risks involved in that. So before anybody gets too overly enthusiastic about, sharing their political positions on their favorite live wrestling show, just understand that there are advertisers out there that may not agree with you. And guess who that hurts? The very company that you're buying a ticket from. So just be aware, be careful, be mature, leave your politics at home.
Well said. I appreciate you saying that. Hey, I wanted to ask you about LeBron James. I don't know if you saw, but this week he was interviewed and asked about the way maybe fans have viewed him differently through his career. He basically said he was embracing the villain role when he changed teams to Miami, and even compared it to Hulk Hogan joining the NWO. He said, I grew up watching Hulk Hogan, and at one point Hulk Hogan was like America's, like everyone loved him, what it means to be an American. And then one day he went to the NWO, and people couldn't understand how he tagged up with the enemy. They was like, what is going on? Everybody just booed him. He went from wearing red and yellow to black and white. One, we're entertainers as well. Listen, we want to go out and have fun, smile, and be happy because that's what brings us joy. But we can tap into the Joker role if y'all make us now. We can get there too now and still be able to perform at a high level. I love that LeBron James, who a lot of people consider to be the GOAT of basketball, coming out and saying, hey, I just embraced my Hulk Hogan NWO. How cool is that?
I think the coolest part is that he's a wrestling fan, just like the rest of us.
Yes.
He may be the ultimate athlete in so many respects. I mean, he's an amazing, amazing athlete. But the fact that this amazing athlete is just like the rest of us and he was a wrestling fan too, I think is really cool.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of LeBron coming out and making that comparison. Speaking of Hulk Hogan, I don't know that you have any insights, but I saw some people sort of panicking this week, and we got a couple of questions here live, including one from PJ Taints, who's been a member for a long time. What are your thoughts about Real American Beer dropping Hogan from the can? Also, do you have any business relationship with them? Well, of course, Real American Freestyle and Real American Beer are together, but I mean, them changing a can design, I don't feel like that's a need to hit an alarm. Like seasonally, people change designs all the time. This is a marketing effort. I don't think that means the Hulkster's gone for good off the can. That can't be, right, Eric?
Look, I'm not involved at all on the Real American Beer business side of things, so I don't have any unique insight into that other than to say that it's a business and there are a lot of people involved in that business, from distributors to the consumer, obviously, and distributors. And it was a rather complicated situation with regard to Hulk's passing. So I think the company is adapting and moving, but Hulk is still alive in spirit with all of us. I know he certainly is at Real American Freestyle. We talk about him often. You see Nick Hogan come out and put the belts on our champions, and Nick has a piece of equity in Real American Freestyle as a result. I believe I'm not involved in that portion of our business, but Nick is going to be there. Real American Beer is hugely successful, going to continue its success, continue to grow, and probably introduce more product along the way. But that's just what I hear kind of in the hallways, so to speak. I'm not really involved in the business.
I want to encourage everybody, if you've been on the fence, go grab some right now, realamericanbeer.com. They are doing a limited run of these Hulk Hogan cans. If you don't have any yet, they're even giving away some autographed ones. I guess the Hulkster autographed some, and having an autographed case of that is going to be a worthwhile investment long term. If you grew up in the state of Alabama, when they did those Bear Bryant glass Coke bottles, there's still probably 24 families. I could go to their garage and there's unopened bottles there. They're just collector's items that people love to display for years and years or decades and decades. And realamericanbeer.com can hook you up. If you haven't already, I want you to know that there's multiple cans with the Hulkster on it. Not just that WrestleMania one with the flag, but they've got the red and yellow can. Some really cool designs. If you're a Hulk Hogan collector, if they are going to be making a switch, I'm sure it's short term, but if they are going to be, these are like limited edition, almost become collector's items. I think that's something that I wouldn't have ever imagined would exist for this product, but I know I've got a lot of friends, including Steve Patty, who works with us on the mortgage side. He proudly displays his autographed case right there at his home studio or his home desk. It's a cool collectible to have. So I want to encourage everybody, go check it out at realamericanbeer.com. Raven has a great question, or was a great question from Conan, believe it or not. It happened over on Twitter, where there was a question posed to Conan. I haven't listened to every Raven podcast or shoot out there, so I don't know if he's touched on this. But during Raven's feud with DDP, he said Jake favored you the most, but he gave me the DDT. Were there ever plans to bring Jake Roberts in at this time? Do you have any info, Conan? And Conan said, I think I've heard it was just those guys messing around. I don't think there was any plans for Jake. Conrad, have you ever gone over this with Eric? So this feud would have been happening in 1998. Jake Roberts was finished with WWE at that point. Of course, we know he came back in 96, but I think he left in 97. So he was available in 98. He showed up in ECW, I think, in 99. when the NWO and WCW and Nitro was at its peak, call it 97, 98, 99, were there ever any conversations about bringing Jake in? Not even suggesting necessarily that it would be in front of the camera, but I know at times you've said, hey, what we really needed in WCW was our Pat Patterson. And famously, back in 1992, when Pat Patterson was at home, I think Jake felt like he was next in line for that opportunity. When he didn't get it, he decided, okay, I'm going to go work for Ted Turner in WCW. That didn't really work out, but he loved the idea of working behind the scenes creatively, but I don't know that it ever really happened. Was it ever seriously discussed in WCW?
No, but I wish it would have been. Now, perhaps Paige and Kevin Nash or Kevin Sullivan, there may have been discussions that I wasn't a part of. Don't get me wrong. It's likely at some point. But there was never any discussions had with me about that. But I wish there would have been. Now, in fairness to myself, I never really got to know Jake. I worked a little bit with Jake in WCW when I first arrived. I think I did a few interviews with him. Certainly didn't work with him in any way that would have allowed me to get to know his process or what he brought to the table creatively. I didn't learn any of that really until afterwards, until after I'd left WCW. And then I started talking to people who did work closely with Jake. Now, in fairness, Jake had been on a little bit of a personal roller coaster during that period of time as well. So I wasn't necessarily leaning into people that I knew, could have issues, so to speak. But had the situation been right, timing, what I've learned since then is that Jake could have quite easily fit into that Pat Patterson role that I coveted so much, that I needed so much. We needed somebody who could think outside of the box creatively, but who also understood psychology as well as Jake did. So in retrospect, I wish I would have had that opportunity.
Man, it would have been really cool to think about Jake working with Kevin Sullivan. It feels like,
man, again, what I've learned since, I think and talking to Jake, Jake comes out to Cody, Wyoming. His wife is from Cody, believe it or not.
Oh,
yeah. Jake comes out in the summer. I just saw him last summer. We went to the rodeo together. So got to know Jake a little differently. And certainly because of the mutual context that we have, learned of Jake and what his capabilities are so much more sense.
Want to highly recommend that you get out there and check out Cody, Wyoming. I think this is going to be the year that I make the trek out. I also want to talk about Cody's house show idea. But before we do, I want to remind you that tomorrow is the Super Bowl and Prize Picks is the place to be. I got to tell you, when it comes to watching the big game, there's no better place to enjoy the big game than with Prize Picks. You get a special max discount for the big game live in the app right now. Drake May just needs one passing yard for the max discount to win. Just add another player to your lineup, and then if your picks hit, you can cash in. It really is that easy. By the way, I want to mention Prize Picks is available everywhere, including California. You can find your community on there where you can find people that you like and you like their picks. You can just copy their lineups. They've even got early payouts now, meaning if your player gets off to a hot start, you have the option to cash out those winnings even before the game finishes. Now, a lot of us, our fantasy leagues have been long gone, but with Prize Picks, we can still have fun, and tomorrow may be the biggest and most fun day of the year. Join millions of other users and sign up for America's #1 sports picks app. Of course, we're talking about Prize Picks. It's never been easier. It's never been more fun. It's never been better. And I got to tell you, they take care of you in a major way. You've got early payouts. You've got stacks. You've even got injury reboots. Some of the competitors, you can't go ahead and look at stats for the same player. So you can do that here. So if you want to talk about rushing yards from the quarterback, passing yards for the quarterback, passing touchdowns for the quarterback, you can do that, no problem. And injury reboots, if your guy gets hurt, no big deal. They're not going to hold it against you. I don't know anybody else who's taking care of you like Prize Picks. I've had the most fun I've ever had this year with Prize Picks. And tomorrow being the big game, buddy, it doesn't get any easier than this. One more time, Drake May just needs one passing yard for the max discount to win. Just add another player to your lineup, and if your picks hit, you cash in. You're halfway there, baby. Go download the Prize Picks app today and use the code 83weeks to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's 83 weeks to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. So, Eric, Cody is famous for doing these crazy ideas that he shares on his podcast every now and again. And he shared a crazy idea about maybe he should get a tribal tattoo like the Samoan guys do. And thankfully, that was a drunken idea. He did not do that. But he did have a really great idea, and it was about house shows. It's come out that he pitched the WWE on doing monthly house shows. He says, I suggested to some of the top brass in the company for a myriad of reasons: camaraderie, the reps, the general sense of working here. It's hard to think you work somewhere if you're only there a couple of days a week, right? Versus the schedule for when we first started, where it was full tours, live events, and then you come to TV and you're home less time, 2 days, right? And some days a day and a half, right? Half the day is a travel day, but I suggested to them, I said, run one weekend a month, call them house shows. Make them almost poke the fourth wall a little bit in terms of what they are. They're canon, but they're not. You're going to see some of the stuff you see on TV, but it's going to be a bit more of a mixed bag. And you're going to see some people you've never seen before who are getting their first rep in front of you, and run them that way where there's an intimacy to them that's advertised. This is a house show. That's what you guys are getting, and it's going to be awesome. They're so fun, so fun. And I know that some of our listeners, they think, well, house shows are inconsequential and I only want to see storyline advancement. I would challenge you and say the people who are saying that have never actually been to a live event in a house show. I hate watching a live show that's on TV because I know that, hey, that show is not for me. That show is for the television audience at home. There's going to be dead periods where there's things happening in the backstage area that I can't see or hear, or I'm not hearing the commentary. I don't have the context of all the promos. It's just not the same thing. But if you go to a live event, if you go to a house show, and AEW is doing one next weekend in Brisbane, and I'm really excited for those wrestlers because this is where they get to try stuff, fun stuff, just be themselves, more improv. It's not so tight on, hey, you got to hit your time or we're all screwed. If you go over a couple of minutes and everybody had fun, it's no big deal. I like that. It feels like the show is for us. I think Cody's on to something. I would love to see a once-a-month loop, a weekend loop of house shows. You could be selective and hit the major markets if that's what you wanted to do, but I still think it could work even without all of the big names where you maybe burn through a P&L and you get right into the red ink if you have big-name talent like a Roman Reigns who's going to cost well into the six figures for a single appearance. Maybe that doesn't work, but it doesn't mean that you couldn't have fun without Roman, right?
It's such a great idea, and it's really timely. It's such a great idea. One of the challenges, I mean, look at how much, even when I was in WWE in 2019 for my almost cup of coffee, house shows were a major issue, like a bad one. They were bleeding red ink. Just not profitable under the old system of house show routing and the number of events and so forth. So they completely went the other way and put all of their resources into television, much like I did in 1992 or 93, when I basically forced Bob Deuce's hand and we shut down all the house shows and only produced TV. We did it for different reasons. But now you've got all of this talent, and Cody, put it so clearly. How do you feel like you're part of anything when the only time you're together is at TV, and TV is pretty hectic? You don't really get a chance to riff. You don't get a chance to exchange ideas. You don't really have a chance to sit down and talk about things creatively. You don't get that bar and car time where so much of the great stuff in professional wrestling was conceived, either in the back of a car riding to the next town with a beverage or two, or sitting at the bar after the show and talking about what you just experienced and what maybe you want to try next time. And that's where so many great ideas were born. And that opportunity no longer exists. But if you had a monthly house tour or monthly house show, as Cody's suggesting here, Friday night, Saturday night, maybe a Sunday matinee, perhaps, I don't know, try it. What's the worst that could happen? And you can have your upper middle, not main event necessarily, but you can have your LA Knights making a special appearance. You can have that extremely high level of talent that can be the superstar on that particular show. But you can also call up some people from NXT. Now, granted, the people in NXT, they get to work in front of a studio, but it's a studio audience. It's not the same thing. It's better than no audience in terms of your ability to work the crowd and learn how to get the crowd to react. It's better than nothing, but it's not nearly as good as 1,500 people, 2,000 people, 3,000 people that spent their money just because they wanted to come see you perform. And it's a different crowd. It's a different environment. And to Cody's point, talent needs those reps too. Not just reps in front of a studio audience, not just reps on Netflix, or not just, reps on USA and television. They need those house show reps. And not only does it make you feel like you're part of something, you're going to learn, you're going to get experience in front of a different crowd, different type of crowd. And it's also an opportunity for you to try some things. So if you're in NXT or you're in WWE and you're working together on a house show, you haven't really started your program on television yet, but you know it's coming. Work your stuff out at a house show. Try some new things there that you can't try on TV. Nobody's willing to try anything new on TV. You're going to do the things that you know work and get the reaction you want. But a house show is when you get to experiment in a fun way and the audience gets a chance to participate. And oh yeah, those reps keep you from getting hurt. Now, I'm never a wrestler. Don't ever try to pretend I was. But I've known a lot of them. And the one thing that I remember hearing them all say from the beginning of my wrestling career was how difficult it is to take time off. Because when you're not taking those bumps, you get deconditioned from bumping very quickly, from what I've been told, right? So getting out there and taking those bumps and performing in front of a live crowd helps you from being injured when it matters.
I hope that house shows make a return. I, for one, would be really into that. I don't know if you saw this, but Tony Khan recently did an interview about Sting's son, Steve Borden, saying that his development is a huge priority for AEW. He said, Steven has never been on AEW TV, but he's somebody we're developing. I have so much respect for Steven. He's a rising young wrestler. He played college football at Kentucky. I followed his football career. And now I'm proud to say we're working on developing him as a pro wrestler for AEW. But he also said, Eric, I don't know if you saw this, but Tony is a big fan of licensing theme songs. And he licensed the old NWA/WCW theme song that Sting used, specifically going back to like old school Sting, like when he beat Flair for the world title for the first time. I think the name of the song is Turbocharged. I don't know if you can hear this, but I'm going to try to play the first few seconds of it.
Oh yeah.
So to me, that to me is still like the iconic Sting theme. That is the one I think of the most when I think of Sting. And the idea that we've got his son training to be a wrestler and he's going to use that theme song. I'm not trying to be a homer, but boy, I'm pretty excited about it. I hope it works out as well as it has for Charlotte Flair when she was doing the figure eight and doing the woo and wearing the robes. I know sometimes that doesn't work, but it worked for Charlotte Flair. Am I wrong in hoping that it works for Stephen Borden? Because that would be so cool to me as a fan.
No, you're not wrong at all. And I agree with you. I hope it works. Here's my other take. This is the producer in me and the guy who's seen similar situations in the past. Steve Borden is going to have to be his own character, and comparing him, even in a fun way, to Sting, his father, it can be fun. It can also get to the point where it can slow you down and become a challenge. He's got to be his own character. But I think to embrace it, acknowledge it, certainly it's the reason that he's in the position that he's in today, both in terms of his desire to get in the ring, having watched his father all those years and seeing what that Sting character became. Who wouldn't want to walk in those footsteps, right? But he's going to have to learn how to do it on his own, because if he relies too much on the footprints that his father left before him, he'll have a hard time filling them. But if he makes his own footprints, he'll be well on his way.
Something else happened this past week. It was a big anniversary that I wanted to ask you about. I don't know that you and I have spent a ton of time talking about it, but a lot of fans, myself included, considered this past week to have been the anniversary of the greatest angle the WWF ever did. Of course, I'm talking about Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant. They didn't do Saturday night's main event. It was called The Main Event, and it happened in 1988, February 5th. So a couple of days ago, actually, when you and I were set to record on Thursday, it was the exact anniversary. And this has been talked about for a long time because I guess some newspaper somewhere once reported that 33 million people had watched, and that number had been echoed forever and ever. Well, it's come out since. It was actually closer to 27 million, but who's counting? Still, 26.6 million people. And I absolutely love this. This is the evil twin referee, if you'll recall, where they had both Hebners there. I think WWF fans didn't realize that Dave Hebner had a brother, Earl. And, clearly they had done the plastic surgery, man. And they stole the title. And of course, Andre, upon pinning, even though Hulk had kicked out, he just awards Ted DiBiase the world title. And for a few days, DiBiase made appearances, some on cable TV, as the WWF champion before ultimately Jack Tunney stepped in. That was stripped. We set a new tournament, and we crowned a new champion at WrestleMania 4. But it's a consequential week because not only is it the biggest rating in the history of wrestling as far as I know, but it was Hogan and Andre on primetime television. It was creatively a master class with the twin evil referee. And if you're an old belt mark like me, it was the debut of arguably the most beloved belt of all time, the Winged Eagle, that is synonymous with Bret Hart and Randy Savage and Shawn Michaels, but of course nobody bigger than Hulk Hogan. And I know that you weren't there. You weren't even involved in WCW in 1988. You're still trying to figure some things out, whatever's left of the.
I was working for Vern. Had been in the business for 1 year by then.
What did you think? Were you watching the WWF at the time? Did you see the angle? And I'm sure this came up through the years with your old pal Hulk Hogan. How do you think he felt about that angle? Was that his very favorite story besides the NWO, or was there something else?
No, I think it was. Hulk just had such high regard for Andre that whenever Hulk talked about anything that had to do with Andre, he was in a different frame of mind. He really, really respected Andre, and I think understood what Andre did for Hulk Hogan, the character. It's just such a high degree of reverence. But I do think that was probably one of his favorites. I mean, it was, as you pointed out, it was a masterclass. I mean, talk about a swerve. The wrestling swerves were really defined, if not invented, on that particular show.
I think it's arguably the very best piece of creative WWE ever did. And it's uniquely 80s. Like sometimes you go watch a movie like Lethal Weapon or Die Hard or one of those classic action movies that we all love. And yes, there's some cheesiness and there's some campiness, but at the time in the 80s, man, it was badass. And if you watch that program through that same lens of the same way we were watching Lethal Weapon and Die Hard and stuff like that, it was just fantastic. I love that we got to talk about it, and I hope that fans will go check it out. It was February 5th, 1988. What a moment it was. And we're going to be talking a little bit about AJ Styles. I feel like we've saved the best for last. I am going to ask Eric about TNA suing Gail Kim, and we've still got a few questions that we can get in from you. So we've got Eric a few more minutes. Keep those questions coming. But right now I want to talk about Mando. A lot of us, we have to get nervous about our first date at least once upon a time. Hey, what do I wear? Where am I gonna? Am I gonna pick her up? Do I need to get the car cleaned? Where are we gonna go to dinner? What restaurant should we go to? Can we talk in a movie? Should we try to do an activity? You got all these things that you're thinking about. Hey, maybe I need to get a haircut. Well, here's the number one thing you need to do. You need to make sure you smell good, and you can do that all over with whole body deodorant from Mando. It's safe to use anywhere on your body, your pits, your balls, your thigh folds, your belly buttons, your butt cracks, your feet. It was all created by a doctor who saw firsthand how normal BO is just being misdiagnosed and mistreated. Mando has been clinically proven to block odor all day and control that odor for up to 72 hours. You got two different forms of Mando too, solid stick deodorant, which is formulated and powered by mandelic acid to stop odor before it even starts. And you got the spray deodorant, aluminum free and ideal for those hard to reach places. All the products are baking soda free and paraben free. Choose from a variety of fresh scents like bourbon leather, clover woods, Mount Fuji, or Pro Sport. Mando has been clinically proven to control odor better than just a shower with soap alone. You see, some men mask their BO with scents, but Mando men get the job done right. So don't mask it, Mando it. Available now in retailers near you, or head on over to shopmando.com, because for a limited time, new customers get 20% off site-wide with our exclusive code. Use the code 83weeks at shopmando.com for 20% off site-wide, plus free shipping. That's shopmando.com. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Mando's got you covered with deodorant plus sweat control. Say goodbye to sweat stains and say hello to long-lasting freshness. So, Eric, I'm excited that we're finally here to talk about AJ Styles. It feels like this is the end of his in-ring WWE career. I don't know for sure that it's the end of his in-ring career, though. You and I were fortunate enough to get to watch this side by side, and at the end of the match, I think we both sort of expected him to take his gloves off and leave him in the center of the ring. He teased that and then decided not to and held up his hands. And a few days prior to that, it was revealed that he had trademarked the P1 logo. And I think a lot of people, myself included, just thought, well, this is all going to be a part of the WWE Unreal series that they're putting together. It's just going to be a swerve. Why else would they have one of their contracted talent like Nakamura say, yeah, AJ told me months ago he's retiring at the Royal Rumble? It just felt like, oh, this is very obviously a story and they're going to swerve us. And maybe it still is. But a little birdie says, no, that's not true. He really is finished with WWE, but probably not finished wrestling. And he even did an interview with Stephanie McMahon where he said that everyone is afforded one fake retirement, something like that. When she asked specifically about the gloves, he says, I don't know why I kept the gloves on. I don't know. Never say never, right? That's the saying. I think everyone's allowed at least one time to come out of retirement. I'm not saying that I'll do it anytime soon. What if my son wrestles? The opportunity to tag with him once? You never know. So there'll be a time when the gloves never go back on. It may be now, but we'll see. I wanted to ask you, what did you think of the send-off that WWE gave him or didn't give him? I say that because when we saw the farewell tour for John Cena, we knew more than a year in advance, and we had just a huge celebration of John Cena. It didn't feel like we got that as much with AJ. They didn't empty the locker room. They didn't send all the superstars out to celebrate him. That didn't happen. Now, I'm not saying it won't happen, because on the 23rd, WWE Monday Night Raw is going to be in Atlanta, Georgia. Perhaps it's there. But there were no friends, no family, none of that. And maybe it was just because it was in Saudi Arabia, and logistically that was tough and challenging. What do you think of the farewell, the send-off that WWE gave AJ Styles, and what do you think is next for him?
Either by design or default being what you just explained, it just being logistically, too hard to coordinate because it was in Saudi, or by design because AJ himself hasn't made up his mind. I mean, what if, and I'm not suggesting it was, but what if that moment that when you and I were sitting together watching, when we thought, okay, he's going to put his gloves in the ring, ceremonial goodbye, right? Just before he dropped him on the mat, he put him back on or held on to him. What if that was real? What if AJ had been considering retiring right there, right then? Maybe that was his plan going into the match. Maybe that was his plan as soon as the match finished. But what if in those final moments he went, I don't know, what if my son decides to wrestle? Or what if I change my mind? Maybe I'm just not quite sure yet. Maybe it's real. That could be real. And if so, good for AJ. From a fan's perspective, I wanted more for AJ. I wanted to experience something more. Whatever kind of send-off. Not necessarily a John Cena tour, because let's be honest, as much as I respect and like AJ Styles, he's not John Cena. He's not The Undertaker. Right? So it's not exactly the same thing, and you can't have that incredible farewell tour kind of platform for everybody that retires, even really successful performers. It's not realistic. But I did want more for AJ. If that indeed was going to be his last match, I wanted to share a moment with AJ that I didn't get to share as a fan.
Catherine Summers has been with us a long time, and she says, I saw the AJ Styles match at the Rumble, and it felt like AJ's retirement match should have been at WrestleMania. Do you think WWE should have given AJ a better send-off? I'm going to reserve judgment. I still think they may do something on the 23rd. I don't have any inside knowledge, but it just feels like it's almost in his backyard relative to where he lives. It feels like that would be a no-brainer to, celebrate AJ if that's what they're going to do. But I also felt like, if I'm honest with you, it was a little weird where when he put the gloves back on, it felt like maybe not everybody was happy with that. I don't know. I don't have any inside information. But when Rosenberg jumps on the post game and says, I talked to AJ earlier and he's done. He told me he's done. And then when Triple H is on that same desk and he's asked, he says, hey, AJ told us he doesn't want to wrestle anymore. It almost felt like they're posturing too much. And that's the reason I say, I think we're going to see him do some more stuff. And as an AJ fan, I hope he does a farewell tour globally. I'd love to see him at Wrestle Kingdom next year. I would love to see him do a big Wembley show for AEW. I think it would be cool if we saw a main event something in Arena Mexico or headline a Triple Mania. Like, why wouldn't you pop up in TNA and have one farewell match there? Like, if you really are going to, do a farewell tour, there's more to wrestling and more to AJ's career than just WWE. Hit all those places. Why not? What do you say?
It depends on your goals. If it were me and I still had the desire to perform and I knew that my opportunities in WWE were limited in terms of what I wanted to do, but if I had the opportunity to pick up the phone and get myself booked for something really exciting in Japan or Australia or the UK, and I had the opportunity to work with a few people outside of WWE that I really wanted to work with because I still want to work. I still want to get out there and perform. And I still feel like I have enough to give where I can go out and do a good job, not let people down. Because people have a certain expectation of AJ Styles, right? Look what he's done. Look at his body of work. When you see AJ Styles' name on a card, you have a certain expectation. Well, as an athlete, you know that. And you also know how realistic it is for you to live up to that expectation. Most guys don't. Most guys lose sight of that part. Most guys think they're able to go out and do things that the audience is expecting, but they really can't, or at least not as well as they used to. And then there's a level of disappointment, either in the performer themselves, because they know, or amongst the fans, which would be worse, right? But if AJ still knows that he can go out there and deliver on the expectation, and AJ has a very high expectation of himself, number one, that I do know from having worked with him. But if he believes he can do it, and there are people out there he wants to do it with, so that when he does finally put those gloves down, he's checked all the boxes. There's no more boxes left for him to check. Then God bless him. And I'll be right there cheering him on and hoping to enjoy it however I can. That's his choice. I still think he's going to finish up in WWE for some reason. I don't know why. I just believe that he will. But I'm here. I'm along for the ride because I'm looking at it from a business perspective. Like, what makes the most sense career-wise, business-wise? That would be WWE. But then if he doesn't need the money, if he's not worried about that part of his future, and it's all about spending time, and I saw what he wrote about his daughter, which brought a tear to my eye, by the way, when I read it, when he talked about his daughter saying something to the effect, I'll butcher this, but, all the kids in school think it's really great that, AJ Styles is my dad, and I think it's really great that their fathers are home with them, I mean, that kind of stuff, for someone like AJ, that will tear his heart out. So this all may be driven by just wanting to spend time with his family. He may not have any boxes left to check, or he may. I don't know. We'll find out.
One of the advantages of being a star to the level of AJ Styles, you get to pick your own stuff. When you don't work for WWE and you're not contracted, because when you work for WWE, respectfully, you're dictated. But if he's not under contract, and if his contract has truly expired or is about to, he could take one-off independent bookings and he can say, hey, I'll come in for you for this amount, first-class airfare. I want to wrestle this guy. I want to go over, and I want that many minutes. He has that amount of leverage in the pro wrestling space. New Japan would not turn him down. I can't imagine AEW would turn him down. I can't imagine, Arena Mexico and CMLL would turn him down. He would be able to do that and do it well. So I think he could probably schedule that stuff that is inclusive of his family schedule, and maybe his family could travel with him because he wouldn't have to go from town to town like he did for so many years in WWE. I don't know. I'm just freestyling. But I know a guy like Will Ospreay. I mean, he holds TNA and AJ Styles in the highest of regards. That's sort of the wrestling that he grew up on. AJ is, for a lot of people, sort of the pioneer of that style. You even heard Seth Rollins give a lot of credit to that, saying, hey, I could never be the Hulk Hogan, but I knew I could be the AJ Styles, or I hope to be. And I think that I want to see AJ, the performer, get a chance to live that opportunity and set his own pay rate and dictate, his matches. And why not? I think the freedom of being able to do that, if anybody's earned it, it's AJ. So I think we're all in the mutual AJ Styles Appreciation Society, and we hope that whatever he does next, he's happy with, and he gets to do it his way. I think that's very important. I did want to ask you, though, I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but what did you think of the finish of AJ Styles with a sleeper hold? That's the way it goes out in Saudi. To me, man, I don't know. It just felt kind of anticlimactic. And I love Gunther. I think he's a great character. I think he's a great performer. But I don't know. I wanted to see the anticipation of a 3 count or something. I don't know. It wasn't exactly what I was hoping for with a finish. It just felt like, well, there it went. What'd you think?
I responded almost immediately on Twitter. And I think I said something to the effect of, a sleeper by definition is tiresome. That's how I felt about it. It's such a non-finish finish. And I'm sure somebody in a room somewhere would try to convince me that that's where the heat is, because you're not giving the audience what they wanted. And I get the psychology of that. And I'm not saying I couldn't be convinced of it, but not right now. I'm not. Nobody's convinced me yet that is a good enough idea, that's solid enough heat to build upon. It's anticlimactic. It, by definition, put me to sleep. Not just AJ, but me. It's just, I wanted more. I just wanted more. Even if it was Gunther going over, I wanted to feel something other than what I felt, which was like, really? That's it? All that for a sleeper? Whatever. And I don't think I was alone, Again, sometimes I think we can outsmart ourselves creatively. Sometimes you are so deep in the forest that you're walking into trees. And to me, that finish is walking into a tree.
Well, I hope that AJ gets multiple more send-offs. I hope he does get one in Atlanta on the 23rd. Nobody's saying that. I'm just looking at a calendar and saying it's in Atlanta. And boy, if I was booking, maybe that would make sense. I know they did a great job getting a lot of quotes from big-time stars. Folks like Roman Reigns and Shane McMahon and Seth Rollins and even Tony Khan all chimed in, giving AJ their flowers. But sign me up for a little more of that. Sort of last call for your questions here for Eric. We got more of a comment here from Chav, who says, JCW is the only true sports entertainment left, not stale storytelling. It's a carbon copy of the way the Attitude Era was done. Check it out sometime. Way better than current WWE. A wrestling historian wants to know, what was the most controversial storyline you had to shoot down in WCW? Thanks in advance. Do you remember a controversial story you shot down?
Nothing comes to mind. I kind of leaned into controversy I didn't shy away from it, but I can't recall anything coming to me that was really controversial based that I rejected. I can't think of it. Maybe it's happened. I just can't think of it.
Joe Bangles says, how does it feel to have your creation as one of the covers on WWE's latest video game? Your ideas changed wrestling and the business forever. Just want to give you your props, brother, for life.
Thank you. Look, left a mark. At the end of the day, if you spend, in my case, the majority of my career in a business, and for whatever reason, hopefully good ones, something you did resonates with current fans. How does it make you feel? It can't make me feel anything but good. I don't walk around with a big head over it. I can't take it to the bank and cash it. Can't pay a mortgage payment with it. So beyond just making me feel good for a moment or two, it's a nice thing to have, but I don't put a lot of stock in it, to be honest.
We've got a question about the Super Bowl, one about Bash at the Beach 2000, and we're going to touch on Gail Kim. But first, we've got a word from Quince. A well-built wardrobe is about pieces that work together and, more importantly, maybe to me, hold up over time. That's what Quince does best. Premium materials, but thoughtful design and everyday staples that feel easy to wear and easy to rely on, even as the weather is shifting. Quince has the everyday essentials I love with quality that truly lasts. We're talking organic cotton sweaters, polos for every occasion, lighter jackets that keep you warm in these changing seasons. The list just goes on and on. Quince works directly with top factories and cuts out the middlemen, so you're not paying for brand markup, just quality clothing. Everything is built to hold up to daily wear and still look good season after season. Plus, Quince only partners with factories that meet rigorous standards for both craftsmanship and ethical production. The wool coat I picked up is holding up way better than the other wool coats I've bought that cost way more. It looks good, it keeps me warm, it doesn't break the bank. And my dad, I gifted him a cashmere sweater for his birthday. It's ridiculously soft, and by the way, it didn't cost a fortune. Go refresh your wardrobe right now with Quince. Go to quince.com/83weeks for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. That's QUINCE.com/83weeks. Free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/83weeks. We're wrapping up a live episode here of Eric Bischoff's 83 Weeks. If you got a question, let's hear them. Last call for alcohol right now. But I wanted to talk to you about TNA suing Gail Kim. You may recall that I guess she was let go in March of 2025. And when she was let go, I guess there was a statement that, quote, she believes she holds legal claims against AWE, that's Anthem Wrestling Exhibitions, a subsidiary of Anthem Sports and Entertainment, for violations of the Florida Private Whistleblower Act. Now, I know that everybody got excited about this lawsuit being filed, but I believe that this was basically filed before the Nashville Chancery Court to say, hey, if this is going to happen, it's going to happen in Tennessee, not in Florida. But this does feel like they may be challenging some sort of independent contractor status. And I know that conversation has existed in wrestling for a long, long time. But the idea that one of the quote unquote boys is getting sued for this by a company, I don't know. It caught me off guard. What'd you make of this?
Don't know enough about it to give it really any thought other than it's unfortunate and it's going to be expensive. And if she's litigating independent contractor status, she's going to spend a lot of money and walk away wishing she wouldn't have. It's my opinion. It's such a complex issue. There's precedent involved. Hey, maybe she's got enough money. She's willing to fight it out, but that's it. The litigation involved in this is going to be so expensive. And unless she's able to prove something that no one else has been able to prove yet, it'll be a waste of time and money.
I think the biggest piece of it that maybe she is going to be structuring her complaint, if she does one, because I don't even know that she's done it outside of just threatening to say, hey, I may, is discrimination in employment. Like, that is going to be interesting to see that, you've got a woman leading the charge here. I don't know. We'll be monitoring it in the coming weeks, but it did catch a lot of people off guard. Wait a minute. TNA is suing Gail Kim. Jack the Phone Guy says, the Super Bowl halftime show rivals the game itself. Wrestling thrives on spectacle. What could wrestling borrow from the NFL's halftime and entertainment production, Eric?
I guess for WrestleMania, a halftime show might, I don't know, man. It's already so long. I don't know that there's any fit. I think the NFL has become more like WWE than WWE needs to become like the NFL. So I don't know. I don't know. I think the learning curve is the other way around, to be honest with you.
KS Dixon says, never fully understand Bash at the Beach 2000. Eric was head of creative and Siegel greenlighted his plans. Russo went into business for himself. Why did Russo get fired and Bischoff take full control of creative?
It's a good question. You'd have to ask Brad Siegel that. That was a decision that Brad Siegel made. He had to choose, and he obviously chose wrong. Not only did he did Turner end up getting sued for a significant amount of money, it ultimately was a bad choice for Brad, and everybody knew it.
We've got a great question that we should do a long form on a podcast someday. KS Dixon says, what were some of your plans for WCW's relaunch under Fusion? You still had relationships with New Japan and Toryumon, for example, etc. That's a great question, but I don't think it's one that we can squeeze in here. So maybe in the coming weeks, we'll do a long form on that. But hypothetically, what could that have looked like? Eric at the helm of WCW on the other side of the acquisition with Fusion Media. This was a really fun episode, and it caps off a really fun week. Eric, we've got some exciting news to share with our listeners today. You know, for years, we've celebrated the biggest moments and matches and legends in wrestling all over at adfreeshows.com. But today, I'm excited to announce the next evolution of that journey. Ad Free Shows is now Ring Classics, and we officially kicked off Ring Classics this past weekend in Atlanta with a wrestling fan experience unlike any other. It was a look inside Eric Bischoff's Power Plant weekend. Let's take a look.
What a weekend it was in Atlanta, Georgia, as Ring Classics brought fans together for Eric Bischoff's Power Plant weekend. The experience kicked off with three legends of the business, breaking down some of their favorite iconic wrestling promos. From there, the spotlight shifted to the fans, as David Crockett and Tony Schiavone took the stage to see what the audience had learned, giving them the chance to step up and cut promos of their own.
The king of the mountain sits on top. I always have been and always will be. Now choke on that, slap ass.
Hey, you hold on 1 second here. I'm here for not only the fans of Ad Free, but the fans of you. Yeah! You might be the king of the mountain in this ring, but pal, you got a long way to go when it comes to podcasting.
Following that, the attendees were treated to an exclusive first look at the Jeff Jarrett story, Heart of a Promoter documentary that left fans wanting more. Laughter filled the room throughout the weekend as JBL debuted his brand new show, Curtain Jerkers, recording multiple episodes live in front of an energized audience.
JBL is definitely still road to me, damn it.
Oh, and there were surprises. An unannounced appearance by primetime Elix Skipper had the crowd buzzing as he joined Sergeant Buddy Lee Parker to run power plant drills, giving fans a first-hand taste of what it takes to become a professional wrestler. And you can't be a wrestler without a good entrance, as participants were judged on their entertaining abilities during Entrance Roulette. But the main event of the entire weekend was something truly special. Fans boarded a bus with Eric Bischoff himself for an unforgettable tour of Atlanta, beginning with the legendary home of the WCW Power Plant. From there, the journey continued to AFX Studios, where historic memorabilia from the mind of Andre Freitas brought wrestling history to life. The tour concluded with none other than Ernest the Cat Miller, who capped it off with live demonstrations at his karate school. The weekend came to a thrilling close with live professional wrestling action, hosted by One Fall Wrestling, who graciously served as home base for this incredible event. It was an unforgettable gathering of legends, stories, and fans, and this is only the beginning.
Next, Ring Classics backstage pass holders head to the home of Double J and the heart of TNA. Become a backstage pass holder today and secure your spot for Jeff Jarrett's Asylum Weekend this May.
How fun was that, Eric? What a blast we had in Atlanta, man.
It's such a great concept, and you and your team, because you've got a great team of people behind us all at adfreeshows.com, did such a great job of putting that together. I mean, it really, I love it. I just have a blast doing it.
Fans got to live out their wrestling dreams. You got to cut a promo on the old TBS set with the real Big Gold and the real WCW United States title, the Ring Use Championships. And, of course, we had Tony Schiavone and David Crockett in their JCP Blazers, and we professionally filmed it. And everyone who volunteered and came up and cut a promo is going to get a copy of their promo of them, and it feels like they're transported back to 1985 or 1986. But we also had ring entrances, which I thought was a blast. You actually got to judge those along with Elix Skipper. And
it was so much fun. I just laughed my ass off. I had a blast.
It was super fun. And you got to feel like what it was like to be in the ring with Sergeant Buddy Lee Parker in Atlanta, but then to go visit the actual power plant, you know, to be in a karate studio like the one where you first met Ernest the Cat Miller. And it was all about Garrett. And what do you know? He became a big part of the show. But I think the real highlight for so many people was spending time with Andre Freitas and AFX Studios, the guy who helped create the Sting character, who helped create the Blood Runs Cold whole storyline. He had Wildcat Willie there. The Hulk Hogan heads you saw in the video. It was an absolute blast. It all happened thanks to our support over at ringclassics.com. It's a brand new app. For years and years, you've heard us say adfreeshows.com. That's always just pointed at a Patreon. But for a few more weeks, it'll remain there. And then adfreeshows.com will forward to ringclassics.com, where we now have our own app. So if you've been with us before and you were frustrated by the user interface and just felt like it was clunky to navigate Patreon, we heard you loud and clear. You wanted an app. We finally delivered it. It's ringclassics.com. I'm going to encourage you, if you're on the fence and you're thinking about joining us in Nashville, sign up on the website, not the app. Apple takes their cut. It's more expensive if you sign up on the app because of Apple. If you just go right now to ringclassics.com, you get all of our bonus content. Once upon a time, the bonus content on adfreeshows.com started at $29, and we had a $49 option. Now it's all $13.99. All of our content is $13.99, and we're going to have not one, not two, but 3 or 4 of these weekend experiences every year, and they're going to be in the heart of some of these iconic wrestling towns. We kicked it off with WCW and Eric Bischoff's Power Plant in Atlanta. Coming up next in May, it's Jeff Jarrett and TNA, and we've still got 1 or 2 more left to go this year. You don't want to miss it. It's a unique fan experience unlike anything else. You're not paying for meet and greets. You're not standing in line. It really becomes almost like a family reunion, but you get to do things that you never felt like you could. Like the whole velvet rope is removed. It really does feel like a backstage pass, but to do it with your friends, it does feel like a family reunion, doesn't it, Eric?
It does, very much so. I mean, so many of these people at AdFree now, we've been doing this for a number of years. I mean, so many of, we call them family members because that's what they become, but have become, you know, friends of my wife's. And I mean, just the relationships that we've seen, you know, develop between, and don't think anything negative now, people, the positive relationships that have developed among, and the friendships that have developed among so many of the people that are part of our AdFree Shows family. It's been pretty cool to watch.
You'll not only get early and ad-free versions of all of our podcasts for everything on my network, but you'll also get all the bonus content, including some great new names we're going to be introducing to the fold with some original concept art and sketches, some old Nitro formats. We are hitting the reset button on the way we've been producing content. We launched adfreeshows.com right at the very beginning of the pandemic when we were all stuck in our house and looking for things to do. So it was easy for people to justify paying for content. We're not really doing that anymore. Now you get all of this stuff early and ad-free for just $13.99 a month. Go right now to ringclassics.com. And if you really want to have the ultimate fan experience, if you're the type who enjoys going to these WrestleCons or WrestleCades or StarCasts, I'm telling you, you don't want to miss what we've got planned at Ring Classics. The Backstage Pass is the place to be. It's ringclassics.com. One more time, I hate to belabor the point. This is available in all of the app stores. But if you download and you sign up in one of the app stores, the app providers are going to go ahead and take a cut. I'm talking about Apple. I'm talking about Google. If you sign up online at the website, ringclassics.com, you're going to get a discount. Starts at just $13.99 a month. And don't worry, if you're already subscribed to adfreeshows.com, we're going to make this a seamless transition. Our number one priority is to make sure that no one is double billed. And maybe if you subscribed once before to adfreeshows.com and you've let your membership lapse, you're going to get an opportunity to try it before you buy it. Keep an eye out for your emails, and don't forget to DM us at adfreeshows on Twitter. Eric, I had a blast this past weekend in Atlanta. I can't lie. I'm looking forward to Nashville. But this show, this Saturday morning randomness that we had, this wound up being way more fun than I anticipated. Thank you.
Yeah, way more fun than Thursday night would have been. So I'm glad that things worked out the way they worked out. And I look forward to Nashville. I'm going to be at that one. So I can't wait. Nashville's a fun town anyway. And to go and be a part of this event, it's going to make it even more fun.
We got some big stuff up our sleeves. I can't wait for you guys to find out. Join us at ringclassics.com, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button right here, because we'll be back next Friday on time at 83weeks.com.